Hello.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for being here today, Tuesday, July 30th, 2024. My name is Brian Engelman. And this, before you, this wonderful event is called the Agree to Disagree Show. And we're broadcasting on the new American media because the old American media has failed. So thank you for joining us. Somebody's on playback that I'm listening to. Got a little bit of a...
Might be on Brian. I don't know. I don't hear it.
I don't know. Listening to, maybe it's coming through John's end.
A playback through mine?
It's coming through somewhere, yes. Trying to locate where it is because I'm doing a replay of everything.
Okay. I'll see what I can close out. Make sure it's not me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't hear anything. I don't know, Brian.
Oh, you don't hear it on your side? Okay.
No.
I don't hear anything. No, but I'm Catholic, so I'm designed to blame myself for everything. So it's probably my fault somehow.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Let's play the intro to the Agree to Disagree show. Let me reconnect to the stream and see if that fixes the issue. Here we go. The Agree to Disagree show.
All right.
Love that. All right.
Great credits. Great credits. Great.
Yes. I was thinking, John, I think true or false, agree or disagree, rather. Are you the person most far left politically out of that the cast of characters in that intro?
I don't know, really. I'm not really sure where Flav stands on universal basic income, to be honest. So I couldn't tell you. Could be. But it's great to see myself right up there with Dinesh. And I was watching it thinking, like, this looks like Politicon. And then I saw my ugly face pop up. So well done.
Politicon was fantastic. And, you know, it had me thinking, by the way, this is our guest, John Fugelsang. John is the host of his podcast, and he is a comedian, an actor, a writer, which we will delve into. John, before we get started, can you just tell us really quick about your show, where we can find it right off the top?
Sure. I do a show every night on SiriusXM, the Progress Channel, 127. We're on nighttime, and we're also a free podcast. So you can hear it the next day. About half of our listeners listen to a podcast, but it does begin as a radio show, and you can get that. It's called the John Fugelsang Podcast. It's sort of like the highlights of last night's show with whatever celebrities or political guests we have. And that's at Google and Stitcher and wherever y'all get your podcasts.
Cool.
Excellent. Blake, real quick. Blake is the co-host of the Toxically Masculine Tuesday show and also here on the Agree to Disagree show. Blake, tell people where they can check you out as well.
TV's Blake Walley on Twitter X, and the archive is always going to be on the Next Level News. I've got to get caught up on everything, though, because I've been out of town for a couple weeks.
Well, I mean, that's how it goes. John, you've been traveling. You're going across the country. New York to LA. Blake and I, we've been to the to the RNC in Milwaukee. May or may not do Chicago. We'll see how that shakes out. It's looking more and more interesting by the day.
I'll be there if you all are there. Let's get you all on my let's get you all up to the SiriusXM booth.
Heck yeah.
Great,
Sounds like a plan. You know, we talked about Politicon, and I was thinking about it as far as the man in the arena. You know, that classic speech, the man in the arena. You know, and John, it's can you tell us about the importance of just jumping in and having conversations with as many people as possible. Like, you are clearly in the camp that will talk to anyone, and we've always appreciated that. Like I said, Blake interviewed you one time, I interviewed you one time, and it's just we're always open to good, mostly civil conversations anywhere we can. But
yeah, I hope I was nice. I hope I was nice when y'all talked to me, and that I wasn't a belligerent, toxic prick. I hope I was okay. So it's a relief.
No,
I mean, I love that Teddy Roosevelt speech about the man in the arena, and I really feel like we have a responsibility, those of us who are in independent media, even more so than those in corporate media, to try to model how you can have conversations with people you disagree with and still not hate each other. I say all the time, whenever I have meetings with any kind of the corporate media, and I've done a gazillion appearances on MSNBC, on Fox News, on CNN. I did my own show for Al Gore's Current TV. But I always feel like, why is it only in sports talk can you hear American men disagreeing with each other passionately, but they don't hate each other? They don't hate each other in sports talk. They're going to fight, and they're going to go out for a beer afterwards. And I always wondered, why is it so hard to get that in politics when so many of us get along just fine with our coworkers or family members who have different ideologies, and we can quarrel and debate, but we don't hate each other? And you'd never know it's possible based on the corporate media model that still believes you've got to have the puppet on the left and the puppet on the right despising each other, and that there's somehow entertainment value in that.
That's an interesting thought that you bring up about sports. Are you a big sports fan? Do you consider yourself on a 1 to 10 scale? Where are you? I know I'm asking you.
I mean, at different periods of my life, I've been really into sports. At different periods of my life, I really haven't cared. I was raised a Mets fan, which counts as child abuse in some counties now. But I've had the pleasure of being at a lot of great sporting events in my life, and but I'm not a sports guy. I appreciate sports. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of athletes on my show, but I more appreciate how sports probably has helped prevent a second civil war in this country, maybe even more than religion.
Sports has done that.
We can have men who despise each other in the political field, but in an arena, watching athletes, those men who are told by their political masters to hate the other, they can be brothers at a sporting event. I've seen it happen my whole life, where guys who are programmed by their dodgeball tribes to not get along. But sports, and I think art, music is another area, a cinema, where because the culture wants us fighting all the time. So I'm a big fan of finding wherever there's overlap, where we can actually acquaint ourselves with our common humanity. And very often, pop culture and sports gets us there a lot quicker than politics and religion.
And Blake,
John, right, that things have kind of gotten a lot worse politically, where we used to be kind of on the same page years ago, but it's just continued to get more and more toxic and more divided as ever.
I don't know. I mean, I keep hearing that, but a war over slavery and secession that killed 600,000 Americans is just a bit worse than anonymous dudes being dicks on Twitter. You know what I'm saying? Like this country's been through some horrible division. Division has always been a plague of this country. There's a lot of people internationally and domestically who really benefit from our division. And I kind of feel like when people realize they have more in common with each other than their differences, you might see some real change in this country.
Blake, let me ask you to kind of follow up on what John was saying about sports. Now, I also host the Unhappy Hour Sports Show. Indians, Cavs, Browns, Buckeyes. I'm a big Cleveland area sports
5 minutes with Brian without knowing he's a Cleveland sports fan, right?
Right on.
I got a Buckeye football up there. I got a whole bunch of that's a Cleveland Indians hat right there.
Nice.
But Blake, comment on that real quick. I thought that was interesting what John just said about the division between a Browns fan and a Schittsburg fan. We hate each other. I mean, do we really hate each other? But then they also
there's Browns fans that you disagree with on everything relating to politics, I'm sure. Right?
Yes.
But
unfortunately, yes.
In the arena, you can be brothers, and our ideological differences can be transcended. You see this happen with Star Wars fans all the time too, or Beatles fans, I mean, these are the ways that we can be reminded of our common humanity rather than just, hating each other because we only agree on 70% of shit.
Now, Star Wars is an interesting, and I do want to get your answer.
Maybe not the best example. I know.
Because Star Wars has gone from the producers saying it's too toxically masculine, to borrow from Blake's co-hosting show, and it's totally changed the universe, and a lot of the core fans have been pushed into a direction. It's gotten really interesting in the chat rooms.
What producer said Star Wars was toxically masculine? I never thought that. What producer said that?
Oh, I never thought that. I think a lot of fans have been bristling at a lot of the SJW themes that have come out in the last 10 years since Disney kind of got.
What's an SJW? Respectfully, what's an SJW theme in Star Wars?
Oh, I'm saying that's what other people are saying. I'm not here to prove that point today.
I don't know any themes in Star Wars that Disney started that weren't already there. I know that the casting has become more diverse, and it looks more like people on planet Earth. I mean, the biggest problem with the first one is that they're all Homo sapiens. I mean, Carl Sagan spoke beautifully about that, and I think George Lucas made the prequels a lot more diverse. A bit more diverse for women. And to me, it's not about how diverse the casting is. It's about the quality and tightness of the storytelling. So I don't really get caught up in like people getting mad about woke Star Wars because they have more characters of color or more female characters. I care about, are the characters cool? Are they well written? Do they do interesting things? Because I'm here for good storytelling. Tokenism of casting means nothing. And that's something liberals and conservatives can agree on, I think. That, cool, you cast a lot of people of color in a Star Wars project, great, but if the project's crap, it doesn't matter how nice your casting office is. So I think most Star Wars fans just care about a good story.
Blake, thoughts?
Well, I've kind of tuned out of some of the new shows that they put on the Disney Plus, so I haven't seen a lot of the new Star Wars. I hear there's a lot of people complaining about them. So
you see Andor? You see Andor, Blake?
No, I've seen most of the movies, but not.
Andor is great. Andor is a great show. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big, Star Trek fan, I guess. I mean, I do like all their Star Trek, Star Wars, a lot of that stuff. But I just haven't kept up with that, at least on the Disney Plus end. But,
I mean, Star Trek in the '60s was way more woke than Star Wars ever could be on their best days. I mean, Star Wars has really been playing catch up in the Disney era, whereas Star Trek was a much more dominant leader. When Star Trek had a Russian sitting there with the Americans in the original cast in the 1960s, I mean, Gene Roddenberry had some balls on him doing that. The first interracial kiss ever in television. I mean, Star Trek was way ahead of the Star Wars franchise on all this stuff.
Yeah, that was Captain Kirk, right? Was he wearing? I'm trying to remember. Was he wearing green that day? I thought he might, or was she wearing green? I don't know. I'm like seeing that scene, but I can't quite see it. I'm seeing green, a green dress or a green suit or something. But no, I think you're right. Sports and art and culture, there's a lot where we can overlap and talk about what's going on without just having to focus on the negative. The point of agree to disagree is like, let's hit a topic, let's talk about it, play tennis a couple times. If we really feel like it's now playing tennis against a brick wall, you go, all right, let's agree to disagree and go on to something else.
Got it.
Like we might have a productive conversation under the next rock. Let's lift another one up. Like just spinning on a hamster wheel. It's like, all right, it has a time and a point.
So far, it's going pretty good. We're not hating each other. It's kind of refreshing. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, Blake, what do you think? Should we jump into the news? I don't know. I did want to talk to you really quick. We'll get to the news and we'll try to find some of that division. And by the way, thank you to everybody in the chat room leaving your jokes and comments and stuff. We'll try to incorporate some of those into the program. Please hit like and subscribe to the Agree to Disagree show and the New American Media in all of the places. So the writing process, being a comedian and someone who talks, on your talk shows, stuff like that. I am so interested in the comedic process right now. I have set a goal for myself to get on stage for open mic night. Locally, good. 4-minute place. It's been on my to-do list for 100 years, but I know how to crack jokes in real time. I've never really sat down and written them. So as far as writing, I know you're working on a book, which is, I think you said your first time. So let's not get advice there, but writing jokes, or when you go on Bill Maher, like what is the process of trying to tee him up with something? You give the producers a fun story. Like how does your brain like actually physically manifest that into a craft that we can understand how to unpack and work on ourselves?
Well, I mean, it's I wanted to be a political comedian because I really wanted to devote my life to writing material that would be dated in 2 weeks, that would keep me from getting on TV. and that would alienate half my potential audience. So those were the real attractions for me. Right now I'm on tour, and it's been incredible because when you do a political comedy tour, especially in an election year, this nonstop fusillade of events. I call it. Am I allowed to swear here? I'm sorry if you guys.
Let
I
it
call
rip.
it
Encourage. Yeah,
I call it this is something of Trump, but it's beyond him. I call it what the fuck fatigue. Joe Biden having the ageism freak out was like 8 what the fucks ago. Donald Trump having that assassination attempt was about 7 what the fucks ago. Like every week, it keeps on having so many historic level what the fucks. And I've never done a tour like the one I'm on this year where I've got to rewrite the first 10 minutes of my set every date. I mean, we were up in Boston 2.5 weeks ago. And 2-3 hours before we had to go over for tech, this kid shoots at Donald Trump, and he kills this man and shoots these other 2 people. And suddenly it was like, wow, okay, how do you write tasteful, because you have to acknowledge it, but how do you write tasteful jokes about an assassination attempt that are funny, but that are not mean, that are not cruel? Because we saw a lot of our friends on the left have a lot of crass jokes that were not really cool, that weren't funny. And we see it happen all the time. Like, how can you take something like this that's so terrible and shocking, how the Secret Service could allow this to happen, and make it funny in a way that's not going to get you fired and canceled by the time you leave the stage? So, it's a fun kind of exercise in that sense. And for me, it's really just about going after the absurdity, going after the hypocrisies, going after the ridiculous parts of it, and trying to avoid being directly mean to people. I also generally, this is a big rule in comedy. I apply it to Christianity as well. You don't attack down. We've all seen comedians who'll go up on stage and do material about homeless people or special ed kids, developmentally disabled people. There's still comics talking retard this and retard that. And they might make a few drunks laugh at 2 a.m, but you feel dirty afterwards. And that kind of material doesn't carry. In comedy, the best comedy is where you take on people in power or institutions in power, and not just beating up on people who have less power. So that's a big rule with it. But with something like an open mic, you're already a good talker and a good storyteller. Just have your beginning, middle, and end. Know what you want to say. Get up there and just talk to the people. But here's the most important part of your first open mic. You have to make the plan to do the second open mic before you go on stage for the first one. Because if the first one doesn't go the way you want it to go, you are not allowed to quit. You have to get up there again and do it again.
Okay. I like that. I like that part. I'm at least committing to a 2-part series: the initial and then the follow-up.
Keep doing it because whatever you think you're going to be as a comic when you go up for your first open mic, you're not. That's not going to be you in a year. Bob Dylan had to try to be Woody Guthrie to discover who Bob Dylan was. Tom Petty had to try to sing like Roger McGuinn to discover who Tom Petty was. You got to go up there and actually figure it out in your soul on stage, because you can't plan what you are going to be. That's a part of you that you don't have contact with yet, and that's the miracle of it. That's the spiritual part of it. You will find this other side of you that you get to wear on stage and have as a persona, and that can keep on changing and evolving too. That's the scary and the fun part.
Scary and fun. Blake, let me ask you to chime in on the comedy aspect, because I know you and I went to the Nashville event with RFK Jr. What was it? Dave Landau, Rob Schneider, Jim Brewer, a whole bunch of people. It was a great night of humor.
Russell Brand,
yeah, Russell Brand. It was wild. I mean, nobody's getting the stars out like RFK Jr. It seems, at least in the comedy world. But thoughts on the importance of having comedy connecting people, Blake, and your favorite comedians that have been able to do that over the years.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's a good way to communicate and to get a message across, and to get kind of that trigger that emotional response in people. And yeah, I think that's very healthy for our society for sure. So I'm a big fan of comedy, always have been. I don't know, some of the ones I like now, I don't know if I have a message or what have you. It's too bad we don't have like a George Carlin. Like to see what they think of this, or a Bill Hicks.
Could you imagine
chiming off on the current state of affairs right now? I do like
I think George Carlin and Bill Hicks are completely relevant to everything going on today, and I still listen to them all the time.
Yeah.
I think those albums have aged perfectly, and their themes are still totally consistent. And I get so turned on when I meet a young comic who has just discovered who Bill Hicks was, and that those guys and Richard Pryor are the Holy Trinity for me.
Okay,
All
yeah,
right.
I agree with that.
That's the old school Holy Trinity, of course. Who do you like that's out there now, John? Like any names that you've stumbled across, some specials, some YouTube clips, or you've caught them in person or toured with them? Anybody we should know of that might not be on the radar yet?
I mean, there's tons of great people out there, but here's the thing. It's tough doing political comedy on television. You might notice this. Generally speaking, in network TV, you can't do political material unless it's your own talk show. So I know so many, and I've had so many meetings over the years with various networks where I've talked about how, there's great comics doing topical material. It's really funny, but there's nowhere to do it on TV. There's nowhere to do topical material about today's headlines, again, unless it's your show and you do an opening monologue. And you might notice, whatever you think of Kimmel and Colbert and Jimmy, they don't really book too many topical political comics because network TV likes to play it safe and likes to avoid running the risk of offending anybody. So even in that sense, we're pretty marginalized. But there's tons of great people out there. I'm still crushed that Lewis Black is retiring. I'm trying to talk him out of doing it because I don't know
Please
who
do.
his heir is. But no, there's I mean, I could name a bunch of people.
Well, you know who his heir might have been. Unfortunately, the Grim Reaper went and took him. Norm Macdonald was entering like that crunchy old man territory, the stay off of my lawn guy. He was really settling nicely into the grumpy old man phase of Lewis Black, just yelling at some kid on his lawn. But Norm from us too quick.
But Norm was really more about absurdity, and that was his genius. He wasn't. I mean, he was political, like in his personal life. He talked about politics all day, and he defied any easy categorization. I mean, he was wonderful to me. I don't think it's easy. I know a lot of people are trying to claim him on the left and the right, and I don't think Norm was that easily pigeonholed in it. But he wasn't like an overtly political comic, but he was still able to do topical material and find the joke in it rather than try to get the applause line from his tribe.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I feel so disappointed that I'd never had a chance to cross paths with Norm.
He's a really kind, you'd never know how kind he was. He was a kind man and deeply, deeply funny. And no one knew he was sick. I mean, nobody knew it.
Yeah, and he made that joke 100 times. As you look back, he left the Easter eggs. Died. I didn't even know he was sick. Like he had that repetitive joke that he dropped. He put those Easter eggs everywhere over the past 10 years. And it's like, oh, in hindsight, I mean, he kept hammering that little joke home because he wasn't telling anybody.
Yeah.
It's an interesting way to live and to check out, I suppose.
I mean, That's his right. David Bowie did the same thing. I mean, no one knew David Bowie was sick. He released one of the greatest albums of his career on a Friday. He has a birthday on a Saturday and he died on the Sunday, and no one even knew he had cancer. So sometimes I guess they're allowed to exit their own way.
Let me ask you this, John, about exiting your own way. The book that you're working on, as of yet incomplete, but it's kind of due, and you're working on it, and you're powering through it. Tell us about that project, please.
Sure. The book is called Separation of Church and Hate. And it's a book about Christian nationalism and fundamentalism. And it's really a book about how you can't hate people or groups and claim to be a follower of Jesus. I have a very curious spiritual upbringing. My mother was a nun for 16 years as a nurse, and she worked with lepers in Malawi, Africa. My dad was a Franciscan brother from Brooklyn. He taught history to Catholic boys and wore the Jedi robes. And so I grew up with a very distinctly Christian upbringing. And for me, the models were Dr. King and Dorothy Day and even Gandhi, although he was Hindu. And so I get really sad when I see people using Jesus's movement as a cover for cruelty and meanness. I don't believe you can use the Bible to condemn gay people. I know all the verses. Nobody follows the books those are in. Jesus was someone who commands us to not hate the people we're told to hate, including people who persecute us. And that's a struggle for everybody. But I just, this book is sort of a guide to how to debate the Bible with a Christian nationalist or an extreme hate-driven fundamentalist for sane believers and atheists alike.
Excellent. So we'll keep our eyes peeled for that one.
Guaranteed to offend and inspire everybody. There's something in there that'll offend everybody.
Nice. All right, Blake, do you have any additional questions for John before maybe we jump into the news, sir? This is maybe the first time we've done a 3-person show this way with the guests, so we're hammering it out on like the first time.
I'm so shocked. Like it's so nice. It's great. A lot of times I'll do conservative shows and guys are looking for a fight. Y'all are delightful. So, I mean, I'm sure we'll get to that. We can do that all day, but.
Yeah, we'll give it a shot.
I mean, I do have questions. We can get into that. I think I'm kind of more of like a classical liberal.
John, go ahead.
I think John and I would be like on the same page in 2006, and then things kind of changed over the last 20 years.
I haven't changed much since 2006, but tell me how.
Oh, okay. Well, just with like today's like progressive Democrats, I think that have gone far more left and more radical.
How so?
Well, like say in 2006, I think as liberals, we were interested in like, legalizing weed, ending wars, pro-gay marriage, whereas today's Democrats seem to be, in favor of, say, the Ukraine war, or in favor of like, giving puberty blockers to kids, or men and women's sports, like, some strange things that I think have gotten more radical in their.
I mean, I'm happy to take all of those one by one. I don't know any Democrats who are pro-war at all. I know a lot of Democrats who are really appalled at the civilian rape and slaughter that Vladimir Putin has perpetrated on the people of Ukraine. Ukraine signed a deal with Russia 30 years ago where they gave Russia all their nukes in exchange for having their borders respected. That is Putin's war, and it is wrong. And I don't know any Democrats. I'm not a Democrat, by the way, but I don't know any Democrats who want to send U.S. ground troops there. The same people who were opposed to George Bush's illegal, immoral war of profit in Iraq are opposed to Vladimir Putin's illegal, immoral war of profit in Ukraine. These are invasions that were done in an imperialistic way for power, and the same folks who were opposed to what Bush did then are opposed to what Putin did then. There wasn't the kind of world uprising against what Bush and Cheney did in 2004 that we have seen against what Putin's doing now. But in that sense, I think that folks on the left have been very, very consistent. In terms of like puberty blockers, transgender issues are a third rail. People are very scared of it all. I think the only areas where people are saying that government should get in between citizens and their doctors are families of trans kids and women's reproductive rights. I don't know any other areas where people are saying that big government needs to step in between a family and their doctor. And I forget what the middle one you said was, Blake. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no worries. I think it was legal weed. But I mean, it was
legal weed. Well, legal weed. Look,
it is legal.
Look at this. Like, whoever thought old Joe Biden, the moderate guy, would be the one with Kamala Harris, the prosecutor. Whoever thought they would be the ones to decriminalize weed at the federal level and move cannabis down to a Schedule III drug? If you had told me that this guy Biden would be the one to do that one day, my whole life, I never would have believed it. Never would have believed it. But that's an area where a lot of our conservative brothers and sisters have gotten on board and realize that it's good for business. And again, the biggest drug problem in America now is the same as it was in colonial days, and it's still alcohol, not cannabis.
Yeah.
Fentanyl, maybe. Fentanyl has entered the chat. Fentanyl
oh, absolutely. But alcohol still kills more people than fentanyl every year.
Believe that, yeah.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. We'll accept those cash donations. We'll put those commercials everywhere. Yeah, but look, Blake and I, the background you don't know, John, is we were both bartenders. I've bartended in Ohio, Kentucky,
I'm not anti-alcohol. I promise. I'm a big fan of alcohol. Just saying.
Yeah, and Blake in Vegas and many other places as well. But I mean, we've seen it all. We've seen every type of everything you could imagine of the excesses of alcohol. Yeah, it's not great. It's not great. It's there's a fine line between having a couple and just enjoying yourself and just going too far, and we've seen that.
You're right, but again, like addiction is an illness. It's not a crime. I don't know if it's a sin. I mean, things you can do as an addict are sins, but for me, the great amorality of the drug war has been that we're putting people in jail for illness, and I've met men who were in jail for decades for having a bit of heroin in the '70s, and yet I turn on my TV and they're pushing oxy to people right now. It's the hypocrisy that I think got a lot of people down. And I'm not anti-alcohol. I'm anti putting people in jail for addiction.
And with addiction, a lot of people like to go back to Reagan and like, oh, Reagan closed down the mental hospitals and the support staff systems. It's like, okay, fine. But that was the 80s. We had the 90s, the O's, the teens, the 20s. Like, we're on 45 years of past that moment. A lot of people have fumbled helping the people that are struggling. You look at the homeless out there on the street. I mean, I don't know the exact number, but I did volunteer in some psychology crisis centers when I got my degree, and it's brutal. And I don't know what we're supposed to do to help people that are incapable of helping themselves in the current mental state, in the throes of addiction, and everything that entails. If you have ideas, I'd love to hear them, John. It ruined Los Angeles. The drug abuse, the meth. I mean, there were just zombies across the neighborhood, lighting things on fire, breaking everything open that they could, stealing things. I mean, it was just like a tornado, a constant tornado of terror in the neighborhood.
For me, the first step is putting the Sackler family in prison. For me, punishing the people who profited off of spreading these addictions. The entire history of opioids have been drug companies telling people this isn't addictive. Heroin was first introduced by Bayer in 1905 as a non-addictive children's cough syrup. Laudanum was heroin for women with emotional problems in the 1870s, like Molly Parker in Deadwood. Like, they always put out these oxycodone. When that was first released, it was non-addictive. They always put out opioids in pill form and say it's not addictive. And that's been the case with Oxy. And the Sackler family has made gazillions and gazillions. There's been some great documentaries and movies made about it. And there's no accountability for it. These are the pill pushers who've gotten people hooked. As a fan of single payer healthcare, the same socialism that every single one of our capitalist allies enjoys, and none of our capitalist allies have ever tried to get rid of their universal health care to adopt an insane system like we have, where the burden is on an employer to provide health coverage as part of a compensation package. This is a relic from World War II that is terrible for business. It's terrible for the public health.
Strange. It's really strange.
FDR era stuff that worked 90 years ago, but it's not going to work now. And
can you actually just define that? Because it was the government said you can't, like, they capped. It was like spending controls, right? And so in order to grab better employees, they offered benefits that wasn't something like that. How do you describe what happened?
I don't know how the policies originated, but I know how they evolved, and it's evolved to be this insane system where you either get a job with healthcare or you don't. And my patriotism and Christianity are such that, Jesus says in Matthew 25, individuals and nations will be judged on how they care for the sick. And I see all of our foreign allies that don't have 45,000 people dying due to lack of coverage every year. And Obamacare, it helped a bit, but I was never a fan of that. Obamacare Barack Obama ran against an individual mandate. He ran against what Mitt Romney did. Obama ran saying forcing people to buy private health insurance, that's like solving homelessness by forcing homeless people to buy a house. But as soon as he was in office, they went for the Romney plan of having people buy the same shitty private plans that they made it better. They banned all the junk plans and all that. And I can't deny that Obamacare has led to the lowest rate of uninsured Americans in our country's history, but it's not a solution. It's not reform. It's improvement. It's not reform. And I thought Bernie Sanders in 2020 had the smartest idea of gradually moving the Medicare age down 10 years every year. I mean, a smart Democrat or Republican who ran now saying, I want to lower the Medicare age to 50. Can you imagine the enthusiasm you get from both parties? I mean, it would be astonishing, with the goal of eventually having it be that our brothers and sisters who are racked by addiction have a place to go where they are covered and can get clean. That's not jail, because they're going to wind up getting sober on our nickel in prison if we don't have the healthcare infrastructure to keep these people from turning the crime and robbing TVs. So I kind of feel like if you look at all the different social ills that come from addiction, it's another strong argument for single payer healthcare, which, by the way, Donald Trump campaigned on in 2015. In the early GOP debates in 2015, I encourage your listeners to Google this, Donald Trump sang the praises of single payer healthcare. By 2016, he was calling it socialism. But in 2015, he was telling the truth about it to Republican audiences. And it was a very brave thing.
Yeah, I remember at the time, I was one of those people that you won't lose your plan. You won't lose your doctor. It's like, I lost my plan. I lost my doctor. My policy doubled. And I'm like, all right. So I had one of those junk plans that was just like, they're not great for if I have a million ailments, but they're great in case something bad happens, I guess. That Hail Mary insurance.
Yeah, and by the way, they passed Obamacare with reconciliation. They could have passed a public option, opening up Medicare to everybody by reconciliation as well.
They had to pull as many strings and as many tricks possible to get that thing. I remember
they did. But I'm telling you,
down to the wire.
Any Democrat or Republican who ran on just lower Medicare eligibility to 50, and then maybe a year later, lower it to 40. Do it gradually and let people see the benefits, because I'm patriotic enough that I can't stand the fact that so many people in this country are terrified of going to the doctor because they can't afford the bills. For-profit healthcare is an insult to Christianity and patriotism and our national economy. It makes people who are middlemen in between the American citizen and their doctor very, very rich. And I don't need insurance company owners to buy a third yacht. That's not my patriotism. I'd rather see us all pay for our health care on April 15th, and then you're covered, because that's, again, what all of our capitalist allies do, and they don't have the problems we have.
Blake, thoughts on that? The mental health issues, the illness and addiction problems racking our country and healthcare. Any thoughts on all of that?
Well, yeah, I would say, first of all, those people don't deserve to be in jail. They should be getting treatment. But yeah, I've always kind of seen myself as very much like a Green Party guy, not currently with today's Green Party, but in principle of, cutting a lot of government programs, but at least keeping, the environment, education, and healthcare, and then taking all the corruption out of the healthcare system. And it should be our goal to try to keep it as low cost as possible.
Yeah, I hate insurance companies. I hate medical insurance companies. These guys get rich gouging Americans for basic health care. And this is not a problem in Germany, Japan, France, Australia, Brazil, Britain, all of our capitalist allies. You get sick, you go to the doctor, and it's covered, and you never have fear about how much this or the meds are going to cost.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I haven't had health care in years, and I'm definitely a little
bullshit.
Concerned about
bullshit.
That. Yeah. I can't afford it. So
yeah, it's insane.
I think the nation is trying to figure out a way forward with this. I know
Teddy Roosevelt ran on this in 1912. Nixon supported universal health care in 1968.
Yeah. I think they should bring that up, but they always want to try to squeeze all the money they can out of it. So,
well, but both political parties are awash with corporate donations, Democrats as well. So you're not going to have anyone coming out and saying, "Oh, we need to have single payer healthcare," when, Aetna gave Joe Lieberman a career. I mean, there's a lot of money to be made by helping prop up this shitty system of access we have. And again, it's in no way a criticism of the quality of American health care. Yes, they come from all around the world to come here because the quality of our care is so high. It is the access to that care that is so shitty for so many Americans.
All right.
Yeah.
I think let's pause there. Let's bounce.
Welcome to the socialist hour on Agree to Disagree.
Yeah. Right.
We're listening to it. Make the best case, put it forward, let the commenters make their opinions known. Please do leave your comments in all the places. As you see them, hit like and subscribe. Blake, I think it's a great chance to jump into the news here. So let's do that.
Sure. All right.
I feel like we could kind of chop it up for 5 hours if we wanted to.
Seriously, you guys are good.
Oh, because I know you got a book to write. I don't want to take up all your day.
I'm neglecting Jesus being here, gentlemen. Yes.
All right. Blake, let's start with you. You have these stories queued up in our news of the day, and John, feel free to take your opinions wherever you want, if they're tangentially related or not. But would you agree or disagree, starting with Blake, that big tech and AI are the greatest threat to our democracy? Big tech and AI are greatest threats.
I would not agree they are the greatest threat. They are a threat. I think money in politics is the greatest threat to our democracy.
Ooh, okay. I think I might agree with John there. Yeah, I wouldn't quite agree totally with that statement there, because there are a lot of big issues, but this has been a hot topic, especially recently, because of what's going on with Google and the search terms. So they've been blasting this. They say this is out of the Federalist. They're saying the left is trying to memory hole Trump's assassination attempt.
Is that what the Federalist says?
Right. Because when they're putting things in the search engine, assassination attempt on Trump, they remove these terms. So people are unable to find accurate information on that. I'll switch to another tweet here. This is from Rob Schneider, who we did mention a little while ago, talking about the Meta AI from Facebook, saying the Trump assassination attempt is a fictional event. Saying the reason for the disparity in information is due to the fact that the Trump assassination attempt is a fictional event, whereas Kamala Harris's 2024 presidential campaign is a real and ongoing event. That's because somebody was asking, why is the rich and structured information about Harris' campaign, but not about the Trump assassination? There's another one put out
Who said that the assassination was a fake attempt? Who said that?
Somebody was just asking the Meta AI, like sort of things like ChatGPT. So it's just a chat bot for Facebook Meta. So they were disappointed with the results that they're getting. And I think they were actually shutting some things down on Facebook. Like you weren't allowed to question. Brian, I don't know. I don't use Meta very often, but I wasn't sure what they're putting on.
Look. As far as Meta goes, Meta took down the New American Media's page with no explanation from Facebook during last election season. I've been the past month getting really strange, I don't know what you call them, push notifications that take over my entire phone saying that Instagram suspects blah, blah, blah activity on my account. They do not like the content that we are sharing, and they are definitely up to the same tricks that they were 4 years ago. Personally, it seems. At least in those regards. Right. And images are being censored. If you're sharing stuff, they're not letting any of your followers see it. Famous, the Trump picture with the flag and stuff. I think that was a Meta.
Weren't they saying that was fake or something? Something weird. I don't want to take that out of. I'm not 100% on that. But I know that there was some criticism of it. I did see that on Twitter, but I just don't have it in the stack today. But yeah, there's something weird going on with the way they're trying to they say memory hole it. So maybe that's true. Maybe it's an exaggeration. But I'd be curious to get John's take on that.
And specifically in that regard, maybe starting with, isn't that how we ended up chopping it up? It was over a tweet. It was, I believe, I'm looking for it. I'm scrolling, trying to find it. Something about taking a bullet for democracy, and it was. How did that go? Do either of you guys have that
kicked off this whole thing, right? With you and John on Twitter,
yeah.
Right?
It was something along the lines of taking a bullet for democracy, and but the story was coming around that he was never shot. Trump was never shot.
Right.
And then Christopher Wray got up there and said, well, it might not have been a bullet. It might have been shrapnel. And then the FBI and everybody, 12 hours later, they're like, no, it was a bullet. And it's just like, where is that story coming from?
And if I may, in fairness, wouldn't it be great to see an actual official hospital report? I mean, is it strange that they're saying the president was hit by a round from an AR-15 that required no stitches? And the only testimony we get is Ronnie Jackson, who was demoted by the U.S. Navy for his behaviors with improperly prescribing drugs and being drunk on duty. And Donald Trump can't remember how to pronounce his last name. I mean, I think, here's the deal. There's two different big controversies here with the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, which I'll remind you was a Republican using a Republican gun against Republican people. I share the outrage and shock that the Secret Service allowed this douchebag kid to get into position at a presidential rally. How the hell, in 60 years, this hasn't happened? How was this kid allowed to get on that roof, get in position, aim a gun, and get off those rounds before it happened? Why was Trump on the stage that long before he was rushed off? There's a lot the Secret Service has to discuss, but at the same time, why hasn't Donald Trump released a hospital report on his gunshot wound? His own son, Eric, said it required 0 stitches. So it's an AR-15 round. And respectfully, gentlemen, when you go golfing the next day with nothing on your ear, but then show up at the RNC in Milwaukee with this giant Van Gogh Kotex pad prop on your ear, it's only going to make people on the left think even more that there's a con job going on, not to suggest Donald Trump would ever be a confidence artist in any way. So there's a lot of different controversies swirling around this. Some of them we need to have more investigations on. I think it's great that the Secret Service had resigned. We have to go deeper on this because I want to know why that kid was able to shoot at Trump. But if Trump was shot, I've done a lot of research on what AR-15s do to the human body, and this required no stitches. So there's a lot that has to be answered. And again, Donald Trump historically has not been an honest or trustworthy person. So I think you're going to see this controversy continue to bubble. He could make it go away. He could have the hospital staff come out and release the report and show exactly what damage the bullet did to him. But I mean, he already lied by saying I took a bullet for democracy. He didn't. I mean, John Kerry took a bullet and he got mocked for it. Gabby Giffords took a bullet. Donald Trump may have been grazed by something that caused a scratch on his ear that required no stitches. And he trivializes the actual loss of life there by making it seem like he has some unearned valor, when in reality, he was incredibly lucky. And I'm glad he wasn't hurt. I'm glad he wasn't killed. I'm glad he wasn't killed. And I think it's tragic that that poor fireman in the crowd was killed. But I think that fireman's family deserves a complete and full investigation as well. And I really hope we get one, because again, between the extent of the injury, what caused the injury, and how this kid was allowed to get there, we haven't begun getting to the unanswered questions on this.
Right. So I don't know if I've seen all the details from that medically, but I mean, clearly there was blood and clearly people died. So there were real bullets happening.
There were real bullets. It was not a fake assassination attempt. A lot of people on the left were saying that on day one. And I was like, y'all are nuts. I know you hate this guy, but if there's one thing I've learned in social media, hate makes us stupid. And we see this with our right-wing friends and our left-wing friends all the time. When your hate is stronger than your discretion, you're going to publicly say things before you have all the facts. And it makes us look dumb. I had people who were like swearing to me the night of the shooting. I was backstage in Boston. I had people swearing to me that it was the teleprompter. And I'm like, but maybe it was, but we don't know yet. And we still don't. We haven't been given an answer yet.
So John, a quick note on that. Would you say that it was a failed security, or do you think it was a failed assassination attempt? Do you think?
I think it was both, don't you?
Trying to take him down.
I don't know what the deep state is, man. I hear this all the time, and it sounds very funny, but I mean,
like who took down JFK, like maybe people like
those
that,
guys are all dead.
Elements in our CIA or FBI.
Those guys are all dead. Well, I don't know. Law enforcement.
Well, I mean, the Bush family is still prominent today in American politics. Maybe not so much as 15 years ago, but the deep state is the administrative class. It's while the faces of the elected come and go, the donors and the people behind the scenes, they're perma. They're not even elected.
Yeah, military industrial complex, like Eisenhower was warning about.
Well, exactly. I could talk about that all day. I look, guys on the right talk about the deep state and guys on the left talk about the 1%. There's all kinds of powerful people that control our government and our country. Many of them are aristocrats who own them all. But when I get evidence of any of this, I'll believe it. Donald Trump likes to use the deep state to position himself as a put-upon victim, when in reality, he's a millionaire at birth, heterosexual white man who ran for president, lost, and got to have the job anyway. So Donald Trump is very big on, and again, a big part of Christian nationalism revolves around this persecution complex, right? So he's going to do that no matter what. I'm sorry, I grew up in New York with Donald Trump. To us, he's like the naked cowboy. He was always here for the tourists, but he's absolutely a deeply amoral, full of shit liar who has nothing but contempt for conservative people. Donald Trump, we have to remember, stole from American citizens, including veterans, with a fraudulent online university. And I have yet to have someone explain to me why I should find that acceptable.
Well, back to the sports analogy, saying that Donald Trump lost and got to be president. It's not quite accurate. I mean,
well, in a democracy, he did. I mean, look, Democrats have won seven of the last eight
that's
popular votes.
That is the beauty of America, though. We are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic.
I'm well
Thank
aware.
God.
I'm just saying that's why I said what I said, because the majority of Americans rejected Donald Trump. The majority of Americans have chosen the Democratic candidate in 7 of the last 8 presidential elections. That was the will of the people. And some of those Democrats were a lot better than others.
Well, I think of like a football analogy. It's like, well, yeah, the other team had 545 yards on the ground, like on offense that day. They were fantastic. They clearly won the game. It's like, no. The other team put the points on the board. You know, that they put on an impressive performance, but that wasn't the metric that we pick our presidents by.
I'm just explaining why I said the expression I said about Donald Trump there. Again, this is a man who, put aside the sexual assault, put aside the tax fraud and the banking fraud and the insurance fraud. I mean, he stole from veterans with a fraudulent online university. He paid $26 million in education fraud costs and still made a profit off of this scam. And that's something that I'm still a bit hung up on, and I haven't had anyone yet explain to me why that's acceptable. I mean, I could go deeper on a biblical level. There's no teaching of Christ that the MAGA movement has fought for. Maybe you guys know one I haven't found, but Donald Trump to me is not a conservative, not a Republican, not good for conservatives, not good for the Republican Party. He's in it for himself. He always has been, and there is no teaching of Christ and the Gospels that justifies support for Trump's policies. Not even talking about his corrosive personal character, just the actual policies themselves. So, for me, it's a pretty stark divide on this. And again, I knew Donald Trump. I remember when he was a Democrat. And then he was a member of the Reform Party when he ran for president the first time. And then he became a Republican, then an independent, then a Democrat again. Then he became a Republican again. And he stayed there, but he's bounced all around looking for power. And he finally found a way to make it work because Democrats weren't buying his bullshit when he was one of them. I don't believe Donald Trump's really against abortion at all. I think he wants power, and he's willing to say anything he can to get himself elected. So I'm sure this enrages you. Go ahead and let me have it.
It doesn't enrage me, but yeah, he's no angel. I don't think he wants to be in this position. I think if the country was
yes, he does.
Sane,
he's trying to stay out of jail, Blake. He's trying to stay out of jail. He wants to.
Well, maybe you could say that now, right? If he wants to hold on to power so he can pardon himself. But I mean, just going back to 2016, I don't think he necessarily wanted to be president. I think he'd rather.
He sure did. He did. He ran in 2000, Blake. He'd wanted it for 20 years.
The Reform Party, but that wasn't really a serious thing.
He had wanted it for 20 years. He was talking about it on Larry King in the 90s, him running for president. He talked about it on Celebrity Apprentice.
Someday. I think you said if he ever felt like he needed to. And I think after, the neocons and the Bush administration, and then after, the Obama, maybe that was that was his time. But if things were great in the country, then maybe he wouldn't have run. And then Brian and I wouldn't even be in the media. We wouldn't need to be, because America would have been on a great trajectory. We think we were before 9/11.
I don't think that Donald Trump ran for president because he cared about anybody else. I didn't see any policies that put the less fortunate first. I don't think he did it because he cares about public service in any way. He cut his own taxes massively, and he caused more debt in 4 years. He caused 25% of all the debt we've accrued in 248 years in 4. So, he's many things. He's a very charismatic man. I have worked with him before. He is a very good communicator. He's a terrific speaker. He's not a public service guy.
Well, if we're going to talk about the debt, though, let's just put it on the table that during the pandemic, and that was congressional spending, like Trump was a part of it. Nobody ever thought Trump was a Tea Party candidate. No, nobody ever thought. He's a New York builder. He takes on debt. He builds things. It's debt swaps. It's this and that. It's accounting, bookkeeping. We knew that he was going to spend. But
he used to be. But it was the tax.
That 2 years of COVID spending was enormous.
Of course, but the tax cut and the COVID spending, the 1-2 punch of both of those, the COVID spending, which was necessary and helped a lot of people during a plague that killed over 1 million of our fellow Americans, whereas the tax cut, where 83% of the benefits go to the top 1%. I'm sorry, Republicans keep getting suckered by these guys over and over and over again. Donald Trump is an aristocrat. Same as George W. Bush. I generally don't trust millionaires at birth who run for high office and have no appreciation of their own privilege. And so, the tax cut was, he promised to make the rich richer, and he did it.
To wrap up this question, to get back to it, with AI and big tech being the greatest threat to our democracy, agree or disagree there? After unpacking some of your personal thoughts on Donald Trump, the human being, and then of course him politically, just quick recap. When the shot happened, where were you, and like what thoughts instantly went through your head, and what are just some of the ones that you're left with now?
Yeah,
because we're talking about big tech censoring the event. Like, we're just going to pretend it didn't happen. People search for it. They're not auto-populating the results. It's like, why are they trying to hide? It's just interesting.
But do you really believe big tech is trying to hide this? I see that picture of him on social media all day long. People are covering it all the time. Chris Wray's testimony got a full day's lion's share of coverage. I mean, I understand that Donald Trump wants to feed a persecution complex to his followers, but it's a very big news story. I was in my hotel room in Boston getting ready for the show when it happened, and it was so terrifying. I mean, I remember being a kid when John Lennon and Pope John Paul and Ronald Reagan were all shot within a few months of each other. And, like, I wasn't around for the 60s when assassinations were happening all the time, but it was terrifying. I think Donald Trump's a horrible person and a corrosive person, and he's a con man who lies to conservatives and has gotten rich off of it. But I don't want him to suffer. I want three ghosts to visit him on Christmas Eve and turn him into a good person. That's what I want for Trump. But even more so, I mean, I was just horrified that after 61 years after JFK, that this could even happen. I mean, that guy, Mr. Comparator, should be alive right now. Like, it wasn't some kind of accident that fireman is dead. Someone did not do their job. Someone allowed this kid, and he was a Republican, and it's the AR-15, which Bill Clinton banned, Ronald Reagan and Gerald Ford supported the ban, George W. Bush lifted the ban. I don't personally think that emotionally unstable 20-year-old males should have access to machines that are designed to kill lots of humans really fast unless they're in the armed forces. I don't think 20-year-old males need that. If you need that for hunting, you suck at hunting. And it's not your God-given right, it's your goddamn entertainment. I was hoping that maybe an AR-15 causing this violence might make some people realize, hey, some civilians shouldn't have access to this hardware. But that's me putting my politics on it. I just don't want to see more people getting killed. And so the outrage is that this fireman was trying to protect his family. He didn't have to die. And I just hope that someday we find out what the real reason was. Why was this kid able to do it? Like you probably looked at these diagrams of the layout 100 times.
Yeah.
I mean, Donald Trump's already going back there to milk it and exploit it because he didn't get a pole bump in it. Like he wore the whole Kotex Van Gogh prop on his head. It didn't even give him a bump in the poll. So he's already going back there to milk it even more. And that's to be expected. But respectfully, gentlemen, I don't see the media hiding this story. I talk about it every night on SiriusXM.
Blake?
No, I hear you. And we do see those memes and those pictures up on Twitter. I don't know if they're on Facebook or if they're restricting them. I don't spend time on Facebook, so I'm not exactly sure about that one. But the kid, he was in a BlackRock commercial, and yeah, he might have been a Republican, but there's a whole faction of the Never Trump neocon Republicans who hate Donald Trump, always will, which is another thing I kind of find.
His dad had a Trump sign on his lawn.
Left.
His dad had a Trump sign on his lawn, and his classmates all said he was a right-wing kid.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I think he was just a patsy. He was set up going into the conspiracy theory land. It seems like they allowed him to go up there, whether he was the shooter or not. I think he was meant to take the fall.
He was the shooter. He was the shooter. If others put him there, then I'm hoping for a very detailed investigation, and I'd like to believe this would be the kind of congressional investigation that Democrats and Republicans could find common ground on, because I'm as furious at the Secret Service as any Republican.
This one just came out today. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. Clay Travis retweeting Andrew Torba. Clay saying the Gab CEO is saying the alleged shooter was pro-Biden leftist based on his alleged social media account on their website. And it says, let's see here, emergency disclosure request from the guy who runs Gab, Andrew Torba, CEO. says on 7/13/24, Thomas Matthew Crooks traveled to the Butler Farm Show located blah, 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 and attempted to assassinate former president of the United States, Donald J. Trump. In doing so, Crooks fatally shot one identified victim and critically wounded two others. Crooks left behind two potential explosive devices. Yeah, by the way, we're not even talking about explosive devices, wherever he got this training from. We'll set that aside for a second. In his vehicle located near the farm show, and additional potential explosive devices at his residence. The residence that was wiped very clean also. So it says here, FBI investigative efforts indicated several emails, telephones, and one possible Gab account associated with Crooks. This emergency disclosure request is being submitted to identify any co-conspirators. This is kind of directly contradicting what the story is. And of course, in Pennsylvania, that's a state where, what is it, closed primary or closed primary. So you could only vote against Donald Trump if you were signed up as a Republican. And the DNC weren't even running candidates. There was no opposition. They froze RFK Jr. out. So I wouldn't be so quick to call this guy a Republican at all.
All I know about him is that he was a registered Republican. His classmates in school said he was a conservative. His dad had a Trump sign on the front lawn. As we get more information, I look forward to hearing it. I have a question for you guys. If we get ballistics reports that shows that it was a piece of glass that cut the president's ear, requiring no stitches, and not an actual projectile, will any right-wing guys care?
I mean, if we're saying that potential shrapnel from an explosion of something else caused by a fired bullet injured the president of the United States, like, yeah, he's still shot at and bloody.
But if we found out he never actually took it, but he's been saying, I took a bullet. I mean, Corey Comparator took a bullet.
I'm not really aware of people that are buying that story. I haven't seen anything compelling to make me think that I didn't hear and see stitches. What I thought I saw and heard.
And listen, all I'm saying is no stitches. He had no bandage on his ear, gentlemen, when he went golfing on Sunday, and then had this big fuck off maxi pad on his ear as a prop for the folks on Monday in Milwaukee.
I didn't see the golfing. I saw that he had a pre-recorded interview and people were calling that out, but then it ended up being pre-recorded.
You can Google it. It's out there. He went golfing on Sunday. Did not call the widow, by the way. Joe Biden called the widow before Trump did. But
there was this blood.
Gigantic prop. I saw the blood. Yeah, but he had Eric revealed there were no stitches. We're supposed to believe this was a round from an AR-15 that caused no damage. So again, I'm not pushing conspiracies. I'm clinging to the facts, and as more facts come in, I will be moved by those.
Right, but they have like the still frame of like the bullet, like kind of like whizzing right next to him, and he just turned at that second. So it's clear that they were shooting at his head, and somebody did die, and then two other people were in critical condition. I don't know if it matters so much if it was it hit something else and it was glass and it hit that.
No, it matters to me that he played up the injury as being worse than it was for sympathy and for the polls when a guy really died, and he exploited that. And I kind of feel like that's what I expect from him. He's a crass guy. He's not a decent man, and so I sort of, he plays up the personal victimization as only a white billionaire can. So we'll see. But again, there's two controversies here, and I hope they both get addressed.
Yeah, and
it's been one hell of an AI conversation, by the way.
All right.
Yes. All right. Fine. Let's spin over to this one about it needing to investigate the feds after this major security failure, Blake. Let's pivot on that point.
I wrote that. I think they already are. They're already talking to people on Capitol Hill. We already saw the resignation from Secret Service directors. So, yeah, I think it's obviously they need to keep going further, and I'm sure they will. So they're not really getting a lot of direct answers, I didn't feel, or from Chris Wray or what have you. So I think they know a lot more than they're sharing. And I think it's very embarrassing for them, and heads are going to roll. But they certainly need to open this up as far as it goes. And I think there's a lot of, bad actors that are inside of these agencies. And it's time for them to get kicked out the door.
Did you have an article on this one to pull up?
Let's see. I'm sure I did.
While you look for it,
I think
John, what do you think about the investigation here? Obviously, we talked about.
I think that has to be ongoing.
how high does this go? I mean, it was a series of catastrophic failures. The same thing that they told me when my Chevy Blazer engine exploded on the freeway. Well, this broke, which caused this thing to which caused your engine to lock down, which caused the overheat. So now you have no car.
No, like I said, someone didn't do their job. Someone didn't do their job, and that's why this kid was able to lob off rounds and kill people, and shoot at the former president. It wasn't an accident. Someone allowed this to happen, and it seems like one of those areas where we could really get a serious bipartisan investigation, with Democrats wanting answers as equally as much as Republicans. I hope.
All right. Blake, what do you have?
It does seem that way. I've even seen Klobuchar and AOC. I think there is a lot of bipartisan. It's good to see that people coming together on both sides of the aisle to be asking questions about this. So I think that things are going in that right direction, and they can't. It's easy to cover things up when during the JFK thing, but now everybody's got a cell phone camera.
Exactly.
Everybody. Internet sleuths, they've been picking this thing apart and keep asking questions. And I still want to know, how did this kid get into a BlackRock commercial? Some goofball. There's so many things to look at. It's just overwhelming amount of evidence that we have to sift through.
Yeah.
So walk us through this post, Blake. What's going on here?
I don't want to go too much into the details. Brian, I think you actually tweeted this out, and this is also another talking about the Gab founder, Torba. Asking, according to the Gab account, crooks supported Biden lockdowns and Biden's border policies. I don't know if this is all, relevant or not, but it seems there's, issues. It says, why is the FBI director or deputy director lying under oath about his views to Congress and the American people? I don't know entirely if that is true. I'm just saying there's a lot of pushback on whether these public officials are telling the truth, or if there's a cover up or whatnot. But it keeps coming apart in real time. So I don't know.
Yeah, and this was just the follow up from Torba. Take it for what it is. But he was saying, he was posting anti-immigrant, anti-Semitic content. The story is this: the account for which the data was requested was unequivocally pro-Biden, and in particular pro-Biden's immigration policy. He was pro-lockdown, pro-Biden
immigration, but he was anti-immigrant, but pro-Biden.
That's a good catch. That seems a little contradictory.
Yeah,
we'll find out.
I agree.
I hope we find out.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know. I wish Cheadle would be being under interrogation at this point. I think she didn't go to the site. It was 9 days when she got grilled on Capitol Hill. She hadn't been to the location. 72 hours. She didn't even call in. I don't know if you're a Family Guy fan, John, but it's that scene. I think it's where Peter's unemployed and he goes into the office and he's like, "Here's my resume. What can I do?" And the guy's like, "Well, I think what we can do in your case is, look, I'm only on this job for another week and a half and I am totally checked out." He's like, "Yeah, what am I going to do about that? Where am I going to work?" He's like, "I don't know, chef." It's the most disinterested human I've ever seen depicted in a cartoon until I saw Cheadle in real life. She seemed to not care one bit about the scenario. That was
I agree.
I agree. On it. Weird.
But I do want to point out, though, that there are still two controversies here. And the other is that Donald Trump exaggerated his injuries for political gain at the convention. And after the speech he did and the prop he wore on his ear, if he had just shown up looking normal, and he didn't need to do all that. He didn't need to wear something from costume department.
He was bloody and hit by a bullet, though. I don't get how this is exploitive.
Because he didn't need a bandage when he went golfing on Sunday. His own son said there were no stitches required. You can see his ear now and see that there's no disfiguration. I heard that there was a dime-sized hole in his cartilage. His cartilage wasn't damaged at all. Yes, he bled, but he did not require this gigantic maxi pad on the side of his head. And I think he heard his own case. He changed the narrative himself because he couldn't come out and appear as a changed man who was in some way humbled by this experience, because he actually had to over-exaggerate the injury. Dude, a guy shot at you and one of your supporters was dead. You don't need to play it up any more than that, but he did anyway. And honestly, then that speech, and let's be honest, the J.D. Vance announcement was not popular with all corners of MAGAville. I was really shocked that after 2 weeks, the guys had no bump in the polls after this entire experience.
Blake, thoughts on bumps in polls, the polling, and was it an overreaction by Trump there? Did he overplay his hand?
I don't take the polls real seriously, honestly, not too much.
I don't either, Blake.
But
Yeah,
they can make them say whatever they want, I suppose. They find. I think even Drudge was getting criticized because he found a Kamala poll, but it was people that were in Canada. So I don't exactly know how they conduct these things, and I don't think they're that neutral. And
I'll tell you what. Speaking of polls, we actually don't have it in the stack, even though it might technically be the biggest story in the world right now. I guess we're maybe American centric, but any thoughts on Venezuela? Venezuela is like its active situation. Some are saying it's eerily reminiscent to 2020. Others are saying it's not.
Yeah.
Thoughts there? We're still unpacking it. Maduro is refusing to leave power.
Yeah.
And we're seeing video after video.
I'm very, very, like everyone, keenly interested to see how this resolves itself. I hope it resolves itself non-violently because it didn't here. Donald Trump ended the 240-year peaceful transfer of power. Cops were beaten on the Capitol steps. Ashley Babbitt is dead. It's all because of Donald Trump's lies. She's dead because he lied. Tucker Carlson is fired because he lied. Rudy Giuliani is disbarred because he lied. And I'm hoping that Venezuela can avoid the completely preventable violence that we experienced here in the States.
Well, I think one of the best ways to avoid the violence of the state is to make sure you're armed with an AR-15, though, because they were disarmed a while ago. And if that regime is a regime that is unwilling to go away, since they no longer have the consent of the governed,
I'm not against guns and I don't support gun confiscation, but I agree with President Reagan and President Ford and President Carter and President Clinton that civilians should not have access to machines designed to kill lots of humans really fast. That's my pro-life. That's my pro-life patriotism there.
I think turn that into a T-shirt or a hat. Pro-life.
Right. Well, it just feels
disclaimer.
Right. We have a contested election. I'm disgusted that we don't have more transparency. I never really felt like we never got a full audit even of Arizona.
Yeah, you did. They did. They paid a lot of money for that. We had
they did.
Audit of Arizona, and Joe Biden got more votes when it was done. Donald Trump lost. This guy lies to everybody, guys. You know this. This is his shtick. He lied. You guys know where Barack Obama was born. Come on. There was never a debate about that. There was never a doubt about that. There was always birth announcements in the Hawaii newspapers in 1961. Donald Trump launched the entire campaign on a racist lie that the first black president wasn't one of us. Would you stay with a woman who treated you the way Donald Trump has treated all of his spouses? The guy lies. Y'all are smart men. You're better men than Donald Trump, and you know it. You know you're better men than him.
Well, he's an interesting character. I think even Reagan liked him.
He's a rich fucking douchebag. He's a millionaire at birth brat. He was a horrible child. His parents sent him to military school, and there he learned to haze people. He gets off on hurting people. He can't not lie. He stole from fucking vets. He rapes people. His racism goes back 50 years. He was indicted with his racist dad by the Nixon Justice Department because their housing practices were so racist. How the fuck are you two racist for Nixon? You are good gentlemen. You are good men. Donald Trump is your moral inferior, and you both know it. I get that he's got a movement going, but he's not good for conservatives. He's not good for white people. He's not good for the Republican Party. He's not good. He's just a douchebag, and he always has been, and he left office with the worst jobs record since Hoover because he couldn't stop fucking lying during a plague. He comes out and tells, as soon as he found out that COVID was affecting black people more, reopen America. And he comes out and tells everyone you know and love to fill the pews on Easter Sunday 2020. And that same week, we hear him on tape telling Bob Woodward, it's an airborne killer. You have no idea how deadly it is. I'm trying to not panic people. But he was willing to send every Christian soul in this earth to their deaths by packing the pews. He doesn't care about conservative people. He doesn't care about anyone who's a non-millionaire. Everything in Donald Trump's life has been motivated by money, pussy, or flattery. That's it. Those are his three driving forces. And that's really it.
Well, I think he cares about this country, and I think that a
No, he
lot of things
doesn't care about this country.
Right.
He brags that he doesn't pay his taxes. He lied to everyone in this country during a fucking plague. He cares about Vladimir Putin. He does not care
Fauci.
about
Right.
America. He doesn't give a shit about this country, guys. You know this. Come on. He says
Look,
things that white conservative guys like to hear. That's what he does. He knows how to make dopamine squirt in the brains of some white people, and they feel pleasure, and they think he's on their side. Look at the policies. He's an aristocrat from birth. How did the Republican Party get so suckered by all of these aristocratic millionaires? Mitt Romney, George Bush's, these millionaires at birth with no appreciation of their own privilege. Donald Trump is not a hardworking person. He doesn't give a fuck about the troops. He doesn't give a fuck about religion. He doesn't give a fuck about what's in the Gospels. He doesn't care about non-millionaires. He cares about himself. He cares about the applause and the pussy and the money. That's what he cares about. You guys are good men. You know he's full of shit.
Well, he's a bullshitter. I think a lot of the things have been exaggerated.
Liar.
Right.
Barack
But
Obama was
even
born here, guys.
Hey,
There was
right.
never a question where Barack Obama was born. And Fox brings every racist they could find in every trailer park on every night. Fucking Hannity bringing every racist jackoff on his show every night to say the first black president wasn't born here. They launched the entire campaign on racism and lies. Donald Trump admitted on September 16th, 2016, that Barack Obama was really born here. So many MAGA dudes, and I can promise you this, have no idea Trump ever admitted Obama was really born here. They still believe somehow that Obama's from Kenya because right-wing media did not cover Donald Trump announcing on September 16, 2016, that Barack Obama was really born here. The whole movement is propped up by lies.
Right. But didn't Trump offer him like $1 million or $5 million? They were being so like silent about it. Like just show.
Why
the birth
should they have?
certificate. Why was it? Like
When has Donald Trump ever politely asked a Caucasian for their birth certificate? Has he ever asked a Caucasian to show a birth certificate to prove they're really one of us?
Well, he's
Come on.
half
Barack
Caucasian.
Obama would have been a
right.
Barack
And he could have
Obama would
given
have
millions of dollars to charity.
Barack Obama would have been a punk to take him up on that offer, and eventually Barack Obama revealed the long-term birth certificate anyway.
But he could have taken his money and given it to a charity. That would have been great. That would have been the biggest FU to Trump.
Oh, because the president of the United States has to jump when some millionaire at birth aristocrat brat says so. Barack Obama handled him, and Donald Trump never got over it. But again, he launched the campaign on racism. He launched the entire campaign on racism.
For context, there was question as to whether John McCain was a natural-born citizen because he wasn't born
That's right.
on the land of the United States at the time. And
But
there was
within
a
5 minutes,
there was a
everyone's
birth
like,
registry notation in a newspaper, but that wasn't a birth certificate.
but his
And
mom
it's like,
was American.
so okay, so which group? Because this is I heard a lot of arguments on that topic, and I'm like, all right.
Who did you hear make an argument on that topic? Because I don't know anybody who was saying that John McCain was not eligible to be president. I don't know anybody who spent a dime lobbying that, because within 5 minutes, oh, his mom's from America? Yeah, okay. That was it.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. You're good men. You know that Trump was a racist liar for years. He used the hype, and he was able to do it because there's a lot of people in America who wanted to believe that black guy wasn't one of us.
But let's flip that on you, John. But a lot of people wanted to believe that he was colluding with the Russians to overthrow the 2016
Well, why was
election.
his second
That turned out
campaign
to be
manager
BS.
fired? Why was Paul Manafort fired as his second campaign manager in the summer of 2016?
That was just one of his guys. I don't know if that's
Why was Paul Manafort was his campaign manager? Do you remember why his campaign manager was fired in the summer of 2016?
I know he had some association with Russia. They do business.
He was sharing confidential polling information with Russian spies. Donald Trump's own sons talked about how all their money was coming in now from Russia. He used to be the king of debt. Remember that in the 80s and 90s? I grew up with this guy, king of debt.
Yeah, I remember that.
But in the zeros, Eric and Don began saying, "Oh no, all of our money's coming in from Russia now. They're funding us all the way." I mean, the Mueller report produces 10 ironclad counts of Donald Trump obstructing justice, and the Democrats in Congress fucked off and did nothing with it. They could have impeached him for that with all the other stuff they impeached him for. They didn't even do anything with it. I mean, Donald Trump's the one who said collusion. He said that word all the time. Collusion's not even a crime.
Yeah, it just seemed to me like it was accusations and then a fishing expedition, and then everybody wanted to believe Trump was like a Russian asset. He was, Putin's puppet or whatever.
Yeah, well, he acts like one. I mean, he really acts like one. He cannot wait to be president and gut NATO so Vladimir Putin can slaughter more Ukrainian civilians. I mean, these liberals going after Joe Biden for not doing enough to stop the genocide in Gaza. Donald Trump will take out a fucking miniskirt and pom-poms and play cheerleader for the death of civilians in Gaza and in Ukraine because he doesn't care. He doesn't care about people. He doesn't care about slaughter and humanity. Donald Trump praised Vladimir Putin's invasion. He called it genius and savvy. I mean, they're raping people. Like, this is our ally. Right. This is our ally. This is Ukraine. And
I'll say this about Trump though. He's the only president that didn't drag us into another foreign war. My entire lifetime, he's the only one that didn't start new stuff. But Biden with Victoria Nuland and the rest of the Obama puppeteers behind the scenes.
I'm sorry. What foreign war did Biden draw us into?
Which I mean,
we're engaged in proxy war with
2.5 right now.
Right.
I mean, it's in Gaza, it's in Ukraine, it's off the coast of
our country has
China right now.
Our country hasn't legally declared war since 1941. So what war did Joe Biden drag us into? What war did Barack Obama drag us into?
War, right? But Brian, are you referring to the proxy war with Ukraine?
Yeah, it's the same proxy war that Hillary was trying to get us into in Syria, nonstop. We got to fight Russia as a proxy.
Donald Trump is the first president to ever bomb Syria. I mean, Donald Trump's the first president to ever bomb Syria. Like, he wasn't this anti-war president. I respect.
I think he was an anti-war president. He had a couple actions, but we're poking the nuclear bear right now, and it doesn't seem wise. One side's interested in negotiating a peace deal, and the other will not even listen to it. The Victoria Nuland stuff, the Hunter Biden Burisma stuff in Ukraine, like, that's directly the overthrow in 2013, 2014 with Nuland, Obama, Biden. Right. That's how we got to today.
So respectfully,
walk a few steps back.
Right.
Respectfully, in Iraq and Syria alone, Donald Trump's drone strikes killed an estimated 13,000 civilians. Under Biden, the drone strikes in Syria and Iraq have pretty much stopped. Trump bombed Yemen. Trump bombed Somalia. Trump threatened to invade Venezuela in 2018. He proposed the largest inflation-adjusted defense budget since World War II. He bragged about relaxing the rules of engagement in Afghanistan that doubled the civilian casualties. He freed 5,000 Taliban. He vetoed the bill by Congress that would stop us selling weapons to the Saudis in their war on Yemen, pulled out of Open Skies, pulled out of INF. We had a nuclear treaty with Iran, and all of our military generals insisted Iran was complying. Many nations put it together. If Iran gets a nuke, it is 100% Donald Trump's fault. He invited the Taliban to Camp David for 9/11. He lied that he'd opposed the war in Iraq. He increased the troop levels in Afghanistan by 25%. Please don't believe me. Look it all up. And he praised Putin's mass slaughter in Ukraine. I don't see where the anti-war part comes in there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. So, John, do you think that Putin is going to go beyond what he's doing in eastern and southern Ukraine? Because from my perspective, I see, the people of Crimea or Donbass that would rather be a part of Russia. They feel like they're mistreated by Ukraine. But I think the media has, misrepresented that Putin wants like world conquest.
He does.
And they've also lied about the Nord Stream pipelines.
Why do you think Finland and Sweden were so eager to join NATO? They're terrified. We had lots of people say, just give Hitler Czechoslovakia and he'll behave. Let Hitler have Poland and then he'll stop. Okay, people? Putin's not going to stop. Putin believes Ukraine is part of Russia. Putin hates that the Iron Curtain fell and the Soviet Union broke up. Putin wants those countries back. Putin believes Estonia is Russia. He believes Lithuania is Russia. Yeah, I really do believe Putin would be delighted for deeply personal reasons to absorb as many of those countries in bloody conquest for empire that he can. And I think Donald Trump would cheer him on every step of the way because he has so far. Putin killed 50,000 of his own men in Chechnya. 50,000 Russian troops died in Chechnya. I mean, look at Georgia. Yeah. He keeps on doing it.
Yeah, I don't think Putin's a good guy. I just think that he's a principled guy. And, I think he thinks that we've been meddling too far with whatever biolabs or violating with the Minsk agreement or overthrowing their president in 2014 and putting in Zelensky and then seeing the people in Crimea and Donbass that want to be a part of Russia. And they feel like they're part of a genocide from the Zelensky regime.
There were Russian troops on the border before Zelensky was ever sworn in. My wife was in Ukraine and said, like, you could see the Russian troops, across the terrain, just sitting there on the other side of the border. Putin wanted this for many, many years. And again, they made a deal with President Yeltsin in the 90s. They gave Ukraine had more nukes than any European country. They gave all their nukes to Russia in exchange for a commitment to respect their borders.
All right,
That's all I got.
All right. Well, let's pause and pivot there. Let's get away from Trump for a second, and let's talk about the next big thing, Kamala Harris. All right. Agree or disagree? Kamala's leadership style should disqualify her from office. Agree or disagree? Kamala's leadership style should disqualify her from office. Blake, we'll start with you. Pull up the article, and then we'll get to John. What do we got here?
Oh, it's telling me it's a subscriber-only article. It was not.
Other than a pop-up that's going to prevent you behind a paywall.
Oh, my goodness.
Bastard. See, we can agree on this. We agree on this stuff.
Oh, this is awful. All right, I want to switch to a different
Oh, my gosh, you're going to get me hating capitalism, John. You're going to get me hating it. I don't like those paywalls. I dislike it a lot.
What was interesting is they put up some statistics in there that Donald Trump, he's notorious for firing people. I think 72% of his staff or something like that had been fired. But they say under Kamala, it's 92%, that she is just brutal to work with.
And these reports have been abounding. So do you number one, Blake, do you trust the reporting and guess that those numbers are fairly accurate? And do you think that is disqualificatory? That's not a word. That it's disqualifying. There we go.
Perhaps. I mean, I wouldn't want to work for it. It doesn't seem like anybody does. Also, the interns can't look her in the eye. Apparently, she's really nasty. She swears a lot, and she's toxic, and people don't like working for her, and they don't last long. So I don't know why people would want to prop her up. I mean, as much as I can say Obama was, deceptive or whatever, seems like he's a very charismatic guy. People really liked him. But
excluding the chef, we'll leave the chef out of that conversation.
Chef, right.
I feel like the chef was very loyal and something really bad happened. John, what say you? There's thoughts on Kamala's leadership style. A, do you believe the reports? And B, do you think it matters?
I think the qualifications to be president are you have to be a natural-born citizen and 35 years old. So I don't really understand about what leadership styles would ever disqualify somebody from having the office. To me,
it's kind of like the Ellen DeGeneres stuff. She got fired because she was abusive to her underlings. It's maybe the Ellen DeGeneres comment.
Again, Donald Trump willingly stole from American veterans with a fraudulent online university. I'm very sad that Kamala Harris may have been short with her staff in the past. She sounds just awful. Does she rape people? Does she have a 50-year history of public racism? Has she stolen from people? Does she brag that she doesn't pay her taxes? Like, come on, man.
All right. Well, how about some of her record as a prosecutor? And we've talked about like marijuana before, but I mean, she prosecuted a lot of innocent, drug offenders.
Did she? Did she prosecute a lot of innocent drug offenders? Is there data that supports that at the Gateway Pundit?
Well, I don't know. That was just one of the articles. The Washington Times froze me out there with the paywall. But
so you dodged a bullet, Blake, is what you're saying. Congratulations.
I do like some of their reporting, but I know it's definitely biased. You got to try to get a variety of different sources here.
Believe me, I read it all.
Yeah, you got to look at both sides and try to kind of go in the middle and see who's telling the truth, because there's a lot. But
we have a lot of thoughts, John, on Trump. Tell us about Kamala. Like, what do you make of her? I mean, I feel it's a completely astroturfed enthusiasm campaign. Even Chucky Schumer did the Jeb Bush "please clap" thing the other day. You don't have to clap, I'm clapping. It just it fits the brand. There's a word called cringe, and it just permeates everything, in my opinion. Are you a fan? Should I come around? Do you dislike
what
her?
Is cringe? How does cringe apply to Kamala Harris?
Do you see a lot of the videos where she's like laughing kind of uncontrolled, like awkwardly and uncontrollably?
In the word, it's like farting. She's constantly farting in church and laughing at it.
As opposed to farting in court and denying it. Yeah, okay.
She doesn't answer the questions. I don't know.
Guys,
Name the borders. Name the borders are, and we watch what happened.
Are you trying to find a way that her character is more corrosive than Trump? Is that what we're trying to do here? Because
no, better yet, I'm trying to have one conversation here that doesn't mention the word Trump. I just want to hear your thoughts.
Here's what surprised me. I thought that for weeks, and on my SiriusXM show, my listenership, they were 9-1 in favor of old Joe not going. So I tried to be sensitive to that.
And by the way, pause. The name of your show again and the Sirius channel is?
My show is called Tell Me Everything on SiriusXM Progress. We're on every night from 9 to midnight Eastern time, 6 to 9 p.m. Pacific, which is why I like being in LA to do the show. And we're also a free podcast you can get the next day that just has the highlights. There's a certain school of thought that Schumer and Pelosi and Jeffries eventually went to Biden. And this is all speculative, but this is just a school of thought that's out there that they eventually
Seymour Hersh
decided.
reported this, yes.
Well, but their calculus was, we can lose the White House here, but let's try to hang on to the House and maybe get the Senate back. And so that could be it. What's interesting and what I did not expect was this insane amount of enthusiasm for Vice President Harris. Like every week I go on Dan Abrams' show on News Nation, and there's always one topic about how Vice President Harris is historically unpopular. Joe Biden's stuck with her, and what's Joe Biden going to do? People won't vote for him because they're afraid he'll die, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what the vice president's job is to hang around in case somebody dies. No one said this about Mike Pence or Walter Mondale. The only vice president to be controversial is Dick Cheney for very obvious reasons that some Republicans 20 years later finally agree with. In the case of Harris, a lot of liberals don't like her because of her record as a prosecutor and prosecuting crimes and being part of the drug war. But then she became part of the White House that decriminalized weed at the federal level and moved cannabis down to a Schedule III drug. So I think that helps somewhat. What shocks me is that she raised more money in 1 week than Barack Obama raised in all of 2012. And if you look at how the rates of young people who are now registering, she's going to help a lot of down ballot races. And even if she doesn't get the White House, I think she's going to help a lot of Democrats in the House and Senate, because there are people, and we know this, it's the same with Trump. There are people who would not vote ordinarily, but they will vote because Trump or Kamala Harris are in this race.
Well, when it comes to Kamala, there's two questions I have about the Minnesota Freedom Fund, encouraging that. And then, of course, what O'Keefe is exposing allegedly with Act Blue and the thousands of phantom donations. It's like, oh, look at the enthusiasm for Kamala. Look at the money she's raised. And it's like, no, it's money laundered. Any thoughts on either of those? Minnesota Freedom Fund?
I deeply support investigating money laundering of all politicians, all presidents, all vice presidents. Robert Mueller hired some money laundering guys for his investigation and then never used their findings in his final report. I'm a big fan of going after political figures who launder money in their campaigns. So I think have very deeply full investigations.
What could that actually look like? I know Cenk wants the money out of politics, and the stock trackers where it's like, yes. I just want to buy whatever Pelosi's buying because she seems to just be a genius at that stuff. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Do you have any suggestions on actual policy? I know it was bandied about, and I can't remember who to give credit to, but maybe it was like a Warren Buffett or something. I might attribute this wrong, but it was just like, you want to get the budget under control. It's easy. You don't get paid in Congress unless you balance your yearly budget.
Yeah,
done.
Yeah.
You put one little bill together and you'll be fine in perpetuity. But in reality, that doesn't happen. Do you have any suggestions on how we could actually try to get a feel on which foreign governments are running our policy decisions, which investment bankers, which multinational corporations are pulling the strings? How do we do it, though?
With the caveat that the last Republican president to balance a budget was Eisenhower 70 years ago. Again, these guys have the things they say, then they have the things they do, gentlemen. But
I'll say Newt Gingrich did a good job working with Bill Clinton, not president, qualifying, but like they balanced it 2, 3, 4 years in a row. Like they actually
they worked together. They worked together and did it. So it can be done, right? If you care. And we have a system of legalized bribery. Cenk is right. Privately funded elections is a system of legalized bribery. When the Supreme Court decided money is speech, they decided that wealthy people should have more speech than most citizens. And so, I don't like seeing dark money funding our elections. I think we should know where all this money comes from. I'm not so naive that I think this could ever happen in this country. But yeah, publicly funded elections where you don't donate. The candidates run, the government pays for their campaigns. We have debates every week on PBS or wherever. Let CNN and ABC still make their money. They're killing off of this. But yeah, I just think that you have to find a way to get money out of politics because we have legal bribery, and you see what it leads to. This is the square root of all of our problems. We're not going to end poverty or homelessness because there's no money to be made in doing it. We're not going to take care of the uninsured Americans because there's no way to make a fucking profit doing it. So we're going to continue to have these social conditions fester. As George Carlin said 25 years ago, you find a way to get rich off of housing the homeless, and these rich motherfuckers will get them houses really fast. We're not going to have real democracy when it can be bought. And I don't really see this ever being fixed in our lifetime.
Blake, do you share that same very optimistic, rosy view?
Well, I like some of the ideas about, taking the money out of the politics and making it, set it up just for like maybe a few months and have all the open debates and not have all the money. It's sickening how much money that they have to raise and blow.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So that is no part in our system. This made a mockery of our republic. So I agree in favor of absolutely overhauling it.
On the flip side, though, I don't know that money's ever made less of a difference than it does today. I think the social media being a neutralizer, when there were only ABC, CBS, like there were only 5 networks to gather.
Do you know how many millions of dollars Donald Trump's already given Mark Zuckerberg in 2 campaigns?
Ooh,
how many?
I mean,
and then Zuckerberg used it to fund those drop boxes in 2020. So it didn't do him any good.
Enough that his ban was lifted. Enough that he lifted the ban on Trump, and he's back on Facebook again. And I was a big fan of the drop boxes because I believe that it should be as easy as possible for every American who's legally allowed to vote to exercise that right in the simplest possible way. I was a big fan of the drop boxes, but we know this. When there's high turnout, the Democratic Party tends to win. When there's lower turnout, the Republican Party tends to win. And so that's why we see this drama that plays out every election cycle.
Right. Well, John, have you heard the statistic that all of the Trump won every state with in-person voting, and then Biden won every state with the mail-in balloting?
I never heard that.
100%, but
I'd never heard that.
Yeah, but it was,
I don't know that the drop boxes have 24/7 camera oversight. I don't know. But again, verification.
But again,
that they weigh and they measure what goes in instead of just dumping boxes.
It's
highly suspect.
Our right-wing brothers and sisters have been handed this voter ID thing for a couple of decades now, and the reality is that voter ID solves one problem: voter impersonation. That's what it solves. People showing up at a polling place pretending to be someone they're not. That is the only problem that voter ID laws solve. And America does not have a problem with voter impersonation. No election in our country's history has ever been changed at the outcome by people showing up and signing the form and saying they're somebody and verifying the address when they're not. It's happened. Sure thing it's happened. We've all heard stories about the Chicago mob and JFK in 1960, and there's legends of it. There's movies about it. But we don't have a problem with voter impersonation. These are laws that are designed to make it a little bit harder for some Americans to exercise the vote. And if you have to pay 25 cents to get on a bus, to go to a government office so you can get a state ID so you can vote, that 25 cents is a poll tax. You don't pay to exercise a right that's enshrined in the Constitution. It's designed to make it harder for certain people, namely low-income folks, not just minorities. Poor white people are shafted by this too, and young people. There are voting districts in this country that will take an NRA ID, but not a university ID. And the reason they give is, well, because foreign students can go to universities. Yes, but foreign students can't register to vote. If you've registered, they have to match you up. So you can't, it's really, really hard to defraud in any large kind of way. And not to put too fine a point on it, but for all the cases of election fraud since 2020, the majority of the convictions we've seen have been for Trump voters who illegally voted for Donald.
And so do you have any concern over the population that's entered the country under
Oh, the
Kamala Harris's czar leadership.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, number one,
I'd love to talk
do you
about it.
believe that she's the border czar? Because some people are saying she never was. And number two, what type of concern do you have? We're seeing the reports that once people get into a state, they can get a state identification card, and state to state, they'll let you vote in national elections, but not local elections.
What states is letting people who aren't citizens vote?
I would want to double check that. I think I saw that most recently in Arizona.
Talking about amnesty, or they're talking about, but it hasn't been officialized.
Well, that was Reagan. I recommend every conservative brother and sister go back on YouTube and watch the Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush presidential debates of 1980 to see how these two guys competed to see who could be the most compassionate to the undocumented immigrants who are living here and propping up our economy. Now, on the Kamala point, when she went down to Guatemala year one and said, "Don't come," the liberals lost their shit, right? Liberals were so furious that she would say that. Now they're going to be airing that clip nonstop through the campaign to show how tough on immigration she was. There is one candidate running for president in this election who has hired undocumented immigrants to avoid paying American workers a living wage in 2 different centuries, and it's Donald Trump. Polish undocumented immigrants built his hideous tower on Fifth Avenue, a few blocks from where I am right now. As president, we found out that he had undocumented immigrants working in his golf clubs. So they crossed the border, gentlemen, for one reason, and one reason only. There's a gigantic help wanted sign. And there are jobs here. And these job creators put up the help wanted sign, and it's huge and well lit. And then they put up a little sign that says, "Keep out." There's a little sign that says "Keep out," and the big "fuck off" help wanted sign. And every one of these undocumented immigrants who crosses our borders, and again, the majority of undocumented immigrants are not border crossers. The majority are people who overstayed their visas. There are 50,000 undocumented Irish in this country. What's the Republican plan to get rid of those illegals? I've never heard it. I've never heard anything about the white undocumented people. I don't hear any plan to get the 50,000 Irish out, just the brown ones at the border. And 100% of the brown ones at the border enter this country because white people are giving out jobs. Now, if the Republicans were serious about stopping border crossings, they could do it in a goddamn month by starting to lock up the Caucasian wealthy people who do the hiring. Whenever they bust a meat processing plant, and you hear how they arrested 300 illegals, they never arrest the 2 white guys counting the money in the back office, do they? It's a racket, and they've foisted it on conservative brothers and sisters for decades. Donald Trump is the least qualified person to talk about illegal immigration because they come over here because of guys like him. You could lock these employers up, and in a month, there'd be no jobs, and no one would cross the border. And you know what would happen? Our economy would collapse. Our economy has always been propped up by exploiting marginalized labor, usually brown people, from slavery to the Chinese workers who built our railroad, straight up through modern times to the undocumented immigrants that prop up our economy and who pay billions every year in state, local, and sales taxes into this country, all the way up to the kids overseas who are making our electronics. We've always had this hypocrisy. We're all a part of it. Can you imagine how expensive our food would be? What produce would cost if they didn't have an exploitable, marginalized workforce they weren't required to pay a living wage to? We're all part of this corrosive, evil side of capitalism that is a rejection of Christianity, where these people are brought over here. And Trump, again, they take the donations from the job creators and they sell racism to the base. These people cross the border because of guys like Trump.
When I went to the Bronx, I talked to a lot of people there. I think it's 80, whatever statistic, 85% Black and Dominican, I believe, in that subsection. And the people there are furious that their limited resources are going to people that are not in the country legally.
Yeah,
I interviewed person after person after person. They're like, "I'm struggling. I could use some assistance." They're up in a 4-star hotel getting $2,000 to $8,000 on a credit card each month, and the crime in the neighborhood is through the roof. My elderly friend got hit in the back of the head by an illegal with a pipe. Like just the pulse of talking to people in the Bronx.
Right, I got you. I'm with you. Yeah,
what's happening
again? That they're coming here because of guys like Trump who don't want to pay Americans a living wage. That's why they come here, because guys like Trump keep hiring them. It's the only reason they keep having this dangerous crossing of the border. And I must remind you that both legal and illegal immigrants commit crimes at a lower rate than natural born American citizens across the board because they're afraid of deportation. which is why maybe if we started deporting Americans who break the law, well, our crime rate will go down even more.
I think we also have a problem with a lot of places not reporting crime accurately. That's a whole
I agree with you. Absolutely. But guys,
collection issue right now.
they
Because I fled Los Angeles. It got so bad. I can only dream of what California used to be like when it was Beach Boys and surfing and before the traffic, before the crime, before like the rampant homelessness. I could only imagine, but it got unlivable. It got very scary. It got really.
What part
really
of California?
dirty.
What part of California?
I was right there in Los Angeles. I was La Cienega, like I was right there in between LAX and Hollywood. Right.
What happened to you that made it unbearable?
Oh my God! I could give you another hour if you want.
These helicopters every day. No, it was.
Yeah, no. I mean,
but again, they come here because of guys like Trump. That's it. That's the racket they foist upon conservative brothers and sisters.
So the wall is a ruse?
Yes, the wall was a ruse. The wall was always a ruse. Donald Trump was never going to build a 3,000-mile medieval wall across rivers, deserts, and forests, seizing land from American citizens using eminent domain. It was always a racket. He lied that Mexico would pay for it. He tried to make our military pay for it. You want to talk about our troops who were on SNAP benefits for their family, and Trump took funds away from them to build this wall, which does not work. Shovels are a thing. The barrier wall they made, we've seen the videos, how you can scale it in 15 seconds or less. Joe Biden gave that money back to military families. It was always a racket, just like Donald Trump's Hitlerian promise that he's going to deport 11 million undocumented immigrants. Does anyone really believe that Donald Trump is going to do that he would have the organization and the money, and that they're going to go to every business and neighborhood and take away your coworkers, your family members, maybe your spouse, maybe your parents, and load them all on trains, 11 million, and deport them out of the country? They're going to drag them out of your homes. They're going to go arrest your yard worker and your nanny. They're going to arrest all the students who stayed here after their visas expired and they're working now and paying taxes in this country. Our economy would collapse. It's a racket. Donald Trump says this shit to get people all fired up. He was never serious about building the wall. Fucking Steve Bannon was literally stealing from MAGA folks with his Build the Wall campaign. He was ripping all off. And then what does Trump do? He pardons Bannon for robbing from MAGA. But the MAGAs who went and fought for Trump on January 6th, Trump allowed to stay in jail and rot.
Well, you're not going to get pushed back on me for the J6 people. I think we saw a lot of mostly peaceful protests, and some of them are prosecuted.
I'm talking about the ones who broke the law. Talking about the ones who broke the law.
Ones that broke the law, but yes, they definitely pushed.
And again,
insurrection
those cops were beaten.
Right.
Those cops were beaten for a lie. Ashley Babbitt is dead for a lie. Donald Trump did not give what we call a fuck about those people. He pardoned Steve Bannon, who had been stealing from those people. He's not a good guy, and he doesn't care about conservative people beyond getting their votes so he has more power.
And back to the Kamala thing, with the Minnesota Freedom Fund encouraging to donate so that we can bail out people that were rioting and causing harm, real violent criminals throughout the summer of love in 2020. Kamala was out there really pushing, we need more of your dollars to help more of these violent people who have been arrested for known crimes, to bail them out. I don't know how that's a defendable position in the least.
Did Kamala Harris come out and say that she was trying to raise money to get criminals out of jail? Because I'm pretty sure that she said that she was going to, that she supported locking up people. She is a prosecutor. She is not a fan of law breaking. I would remind you that 26 million people protested worldwide after the murder of George Floyd. It was the largest protest in Earth history. The overwhelming majority of those people were not violent, and they were all protesting over a murder. The folks on January 6th were committing violence in service of a lie.
Well, it was also kind of a lie to say it was an insurrection, when an insurrection is like an organized armed overthrow of the government.
I don't call it an insurrection. I call it a terrorist attack, because according to the dictionary, terrorism is the use of violence or the threat of violence against the civilian population to enact a policy change. I mean, seriously, if Kamala Harris loses this election, all she has to do as vice president is get some fake electors, right? This was Donald Trump's whole legal argument. They were going to get Mike Pence to do the right thing and commit fraud and take some electors to throw out the will of the voters back in those states. Well, if Kamala Harris were to try the same exact illegal scam, would conservatives defend her as they defended Trump when he tried to do it?
Well, I think even Nancy Pelosi was on camera saying she was going to just give the electors for Arizona. She was prepared to give that part up. And a lot of people were questioning how the 6 swing states, stopped counting. And then all of a sudden the next morning they end up having
Guys,
huge
come on. He
boosts.
lost, guys. He lost. Come on.
81 million when a guy
His
can't
daughter,
drive
his
people at a
yes,
right.
81
80
million.
people at a speech, but he gets 81 million
Yeah.
verified votes.
Yeah.
A lot of people were questioning that. And then
60
Trump
lawsuits. Yeah, well, that's why we had 60. That's why we had
Right.
60 lawsuits. That's why Rudy Giuliani is disbarred. That's why
Right.
Tucker Carlson cost Fox News $750 million and got fired himself. Guys, Trump lost.
Right,
His
but he
Secretary of
exposed a
State
lot.
said so. His
Right.
daughter told him he lost. His Homeland Security chief told him he lost.
Right, but like they were holding on to that evidence. They were withholding evidence from the J6, that committee. And then, Tucker
Guys,
did get fired after exposing a
You're
lot
too
of
good
those
for him,
things.
gentlemen. You're too good for this guy. You're too good for his
No,
bullshit.
no.
You are
But how
good
can-
men.
Well, sure, but I like, Rand Paul, Ron Paul. Those guys were demonized and destroyed too. So I mean, who are we supposed to vote for? So John, you're smart.
Wait a minute.
right?
How
Right.
Rand Paul and Ron Paul? I mean, they've been criticized for stuff. I've praised both of them at different times, and I've criticized both of them for different times.
Oh, okay, I appreciate that, because a lot of people just think they're awful, and they love Fauci.
And
who I think
remember,
lied about him.
Ron has been proven to be quite a racist motherfucker. I mean, those newsletters were pretty unpleasant for me because I defended Ron a lot. I praised
Right.
Ron when he was the Republican who actually opposed the Iraq War on conservative grounds. I cheered for that man. But then when I read the racist shit in his newsletter, it was pretty icky. And Rand told the truth about Donald Trump once, just like Ted Cruz did, just like Glenn Beck did, just like Marco Rubio did, just like so many did. And then Rand decided that he liked the taste of Donald's boots. So that's where he's at. I mean, I'm not a fan of Mitt Romney. I'm not a fan of Paul Ryan. Not a fan of Liz Cheney, but I'll respect them for staying true to their ideology and not buckling for this guy, because again, this guy is not good for the Republican Party.
But you think the neocons are better than MAGA?
It's hard to say. They're different. It's different kinds of selfishness.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that I found unusual. Like there are sworn rivals in the 2000s.
It's all the same. They're all the same people. Listen,
Right.
when the Iraq War was happening, this is what the experience was for liberals and moderates and some conservatives, that every night Fox News is talking about how people opposing President Bush's noble war to keep us all safe, to keep gas prices low and jobs. The oil was given to 4 Western oil countries. It was always a scam. And we all kept saying, guys, Bush and Cheney are lying to you. This is corrupt. And we were called America haters. We were told that we were in with the terrorists. Then Donald Trump comes along. And then when we were proven right, and the war was a big disaster, and all these people got killed, we were hated even more. Then in 2015, Donald Trump comes along, enters a race as a Republican, and begins saying in the debates in 2015, you all were lied to by Bush and Cheney. The Iraq war was a racket. Suddenly, the Republican voting base cuts Bush loose. I mean, George W. Bush has not been welcome at the last 3 Republican conventions, and he's the only living retired Republican president. The same people that attacked us for criticizing Bush's war now have made Bush persona non grata in their own party. Because Donald Trump told them exactly what we were saying in 2004. And so, I mean, Donald Trump's going to get cut aside when a more charismatic guy comes along.
That is so interesting that you phrased it that way, that George Bush Jr. is the only living Republican president other than Trump.
And he's not even invited to the
We still have
convention.
Jimmy Carter. We still have Jimmy Carter around. And
We do, but
again,
George W. Bush, you remember how the Republican Party was in blind obedience to President Bush. And if anyone questioned the morality of the Iraq war, we were called terrorists. Now, Republicans forgot all about that. And Donald Trump said, cut Bush loose in a day. Bush was persona non grata in his own party because Donald Trump said what the liberals had been saying 20 years earlier.
All right, let me wrap it on this.
Change. I think it was a good change. I saw it firsthand because I was in Nevada. I was a Ron Paul guy. We took over the Republican Party there. That was one of the 5 states.
I know, but it's the same. The Tea Party became MAGA. It's MAGA got people who don't normally vote to show up and vote, but generally, it's just the same. It's just different names the media gives to the same tribe of folks.
All right,
Yeah,
let me just
I've never
bookend
been
this.
on board with the neocons. They've always been like sworn enemy number one. I've never changed on that one. I've never come around to be like, yeah, let's buddy up with Mitt
But
Romney.
what
or Liz
Republicans,
Cheney.
what Republicans that supported Iraq have stopped being neocons? I mean, most of them are still in Congress.
Yeah,
They're all
well,
still
that's
there.
possible.
They're all still there,
Term
and they think
limits.
that. And by the way, they think the
Right.
Iraq War was great. They still think Iraq, because the Western oil companies made a lot of money. All the oil in Iraq was given to 4 different companies, including BP, and that's what it was all about. 4,486 troops had to die, so our oil could get out from under their ground.
Yeah, no, it's disgusting. Those were awful, miserable years. They destroyed this country. I wouldn't have to get involved in the media.
And
right.
Trump never opposed it, by the way. Never opposed that war.
Yeah, he wanted to take the oil money. I know that.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
I mean, plunder.
the WMDs.
Yeah, doctrine of discovery, right? Manifest destiny. Yeah, yeah. Well, guess what? We're the same people who warned you back then have been warning you pretty fiercely about this guy, brothers. Just so you know, it's not because we hate our conservative loved ones and coworkers and neighbors. We're warning y'all the way we warned you about Bush, because you deserve better leaders.
Well, we all deserve better leaders. I wish we had. Yeah, we could start fresh with
we agree on that.
Slate of candidates, but yeah, there's no way I could possibly get behind a Biden or a Kamala or anything like that. So I don't know.
Why is Donald Trump? Why is Kamala Harris a worse person than Donald Trump?
Oh, I mean, I've seen her talk. I've seen her during her debates when she was running. I don't think she's qualified for this. I think she's been a poor.
She is qualified. She is qualified. Yeah. She is qualified. What do you mean she's not qualified? She's a vice president and a senator and the attorney general of California. Right. Listen, guys, you know the Republican Party's got a problem with racism. And this DEI shit, that's this year's slur that's acceptable. Last year it was CRT. Before that it was BLM. Before that it was woke. This is code talk. And it only works in the right-wing bubble. Because when you look at a woman who graduated top of her class from Howard, went to law school, became an attorney general and a senator and a vice president and now a presidential party nominee, and the Republicans are going to say that woman's a DEI hire, they're alienating the very young people, women, and voters of color that they claim they're trying to reach out to.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think it's a poor choice to go after the DEI stuff. I agree. But, I mean, in 4 years, I mean, she's had many opportunities to shine, and I haven't seen much, especially with Biden.
What do you expect from what are vice presidents supposed to do? How did Mike Pence shine? How did Walter Mondale shine? How did Dan Quayle shine? Right. I mean, come on, it's a vice president. Your job is to go around and, open malls and christen ships.
All right, let me play this real quick since we brought up the DEI thing. This is Joe Biden in his own words.
To me, the values of diversity, equality, inclusion are literally, and that's not kidding, the core strengths of America. That's why I'm proud to have the most diverse administration in history. It taps into the full talents of our country. And starts at the top with the vice president.
So, I mean, in his words, they're bandying about. I've said bandying about twice. I need to find another turn of phrase. But in his own words, he's praising the concepts of diversity, equality, and inclusion. And it starts at the top with the vice president. That's his words, not a Republican words.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like Pocahontas, right?
So either DEI is good or it's racist, but the Democrats are pushing it either way.
Well, no, I mean, just as we say, a gun isn't good or evil, it depends on who's holding it. I mean, it's sort of like the word Pocahontas, right? Are you saying DEI as a slur? Or are you saying DEI as a formula to help bring more equity and justice to the American workplace and American education? Because I don't know which part upsets our Republican friends so much, the diversity, the equity, or the inclusion. But those are all pretty high values for Jesus in that book the Republicans claim to follow. And I don't think Republicans realize that, like, rebranding racism with stuff that doesn't feel racist this year, I mean, like, people can see now how racist the birtherism was, right? Like, you don't want to be the guys who have all shit about BLM and woke and CRT and now DEI in your social media feed 10 years from now, because people are going to realize what it is. And every year there's a new acronym or a new term, and how the very concepts of empathy are smeared. When I was a kid, it was bleeding heart liberal. Well, bleeding heart, you mean like Jesus? And then it was politically correct, which I just thought that's just trying to use language to not be dicks to people, right? Like call people what they want to be called, and then it was a social justice warrior. And I'm like, well, that was Jesus's entire ministry, wasn't it? I mean, we never run out of expressions meant to smear and trivialize basic empathy. And I think DEI is a trap that a lot of our Republican friends are walking into because it just makes folks look mean.
Well, there's mean and then there's competent. I know Elon Musk got into it with Mark Cuban. They were going back about DEI and
you mean millionaire at birth from a South African diamond mine, Elon Musk, who made it all the way to the top on his own, or Donald Trump, who was given $300 million from his dad when he was 1 year old, who crawled all the way to the. Donald Trump bankrupted a casino in Atlantic City, and Fred had to send a guy in with $5 million to buy 5 million of chips in a suitcase to keep his son afloat. I mean, I'm happy to have the conversation about who's qualified and who deserves office, because I'm sorry, someone who built their way up from nothing. I mean, Ronald Reagan was not born a millionaire, but he's the last Republican president who wasn't.
But back to the DEI thing real quick. Elon asked Mark Cuban, going back to our sports analogy where we kind of had sports as a theme at the beginning of the show. He said, Mark Cuban pushing the DEI stuff. It's like you either get the most qualified, competent person or you don't. And they kind of played tennis on the issue for a little bit.
I'm sorry. I think you get more qualified with DEI because the system is unfairly tilted towards white guys like us. And you guys have seen mediocre white men rise above more qualified women or people of color. We've all witnessed it in the workplace. We've all seen it in our lifetimes. So if you're someone who actually gets to the table and gets to the interview and has a shot, I would say, fuck what you think about DEI. You're more qualified because you didn't have the societal privilege of this color skin or this gender or being heterosexual. So I don't buy it. If someone's incompetent, they should be fired. But trying to say that this very accomplished mixed race woman is incompetent is not a winning formula for Republicans if they're trying to expand their voting base.
Well, the sports analogy that he said, he was talking to Cuban and he says, cool, so when should we expect to see short, white, Asian women on the Mavericks? So it's not about getting better. I was discussing it.
But it's a stupid parallel. Short, white, Asian women are not qualified to be in the NBA. I wouldn't hire one.
That's the point. If you're the general manager of a football team, the Cleveland Browns, and you go, hey, I'm going to go out and hire the most qualified tight end from Nebraska this year.
Yes.
We have to represent all 50 states. I need a tight end from Nebraska. It's like, no, you don't. You need a qualified tight end.
Yes.
You need the most qualified.
That's why Elon's thing is stupid. Elon's thing is.
I was just going to add, in Butler, when we saw the Secret Service stuff, I mean, these were very diminutive. There were two very diminutive in stature female bodyguards there. The job is to protect a 6 foot something large human being.
I heard all these criticisms of those women.
They're just not qualified to have that height. They don't. Can she dunk a basketball? She's not qualified to dunk a basketball.
Are you saying that the Trump campaign fucked up by not getting taller Secret Service agents? Because I'm assuming if the Trump campaign didn't want any Secret Service in their detail, they'd have them replaced. I think he has that agency.
Oh, there's a lot coming out about how many requests have been made to beef up that security and how much was diverted to a Jill Biden event a couple hours away.
Well, if we find out it was a woman, let's just assume we can talk about the short female Secret Service agents all you want. I'm pretty sure when this investigation comes through, we'll find out that it was a white man's negligence that allowed this kid to get those shots off. So just putting that out there. Again, Elon Musk.
That's a woman right there. That's Cheadle. Right. She was in charge of all of it.
And now she's gone. But again, Elon Musk is no one to talk about unqualified people because his entire life has been couched in privilege. He didn't have to build himself up from nothing any more than Donald Trump did. So I'm sorry. I'm much more impressed by Kamala Harris's life trajectory or Barack Obama's or Jimmy Carter's or Bill Clinton's or Ronald Reagan's or anybody. And by the way, I'm not against rich people. Robert F. Kennedy was someone who actually was born rich and grew up and then began to appreciate his privilege and realized that this economic inequality in this country is bad for all of us, including the rich. There are rich people with empathy out there who do care. And I hope that there's more of them there. I'm a capitalist with empathy, and I believe in that. And so this DEI thing, it's just like affirmative action, man. You want to call her an affirmative action hire? You want to say she's not qualified because of her skin and her gender? You might not think that's how you're really conveying things, that's how it comes off. I mean, this woman is really accomplished. And I've already talked to people who are not Kamala Harris fans before, liberals and black folks. And by God, they are so offended by what has been said about her in the last 10 days that they are way on board more than I ever thought they would be.
Well, once again, like that was Joe Biden's words. Joe
Yes,
Biden
but he wasn't
pushing the
slurring
merits
it.
of diversity, equity,
Yes,
inclusion.
he's talking about why it's a good thing, because diversity, equity, and inclusion is a good thing. Workplaces should look like America. If you're a corporation, and my wife works in tech companies don't want to have all straight white male staffs. People don't want to go work in companies where it's all straight white men. People want to work in companies that look like America. And it's not about hiring unqualified people.
As a straight white man, how am I supposed to feel about that? That there's a discrimination against me every day for no fault of my own because of how I was born. But how am I supposed to feel about that? That's
how is that a discrimination? If someone else, it's like the gay marriage argument. Someone gets what you got, and that means you lost something.
If jobs are not available to me because I don't check off some sort of box, yeah, that's
are those
a problem.
jobs. But are those jobs entitled to white men, or are those jobs entitled to whoever the employer decides they want for their business?
It's supposed to be about competency. It's not supposed
to be about
the best tight end from Nebraska. You pick the best tight end in the nation.
Yeah, so it's in sports or in business, it's all about who the employer thinks is best for his organization or her organization. That's the factor.
Yeah, but a better tight end from Iowa should get that job, and he's being shut out because of some very arbitrary standard instead of competency and qualifications.
When has a qualified tight end been disqualified for someone less talented than him?
Every time they're limited based on sex or skin color or genitalia, like that's when when they don't get that job, and that happens in government. That happens in corporations.
But when you say that, it sounds like those jobs are meant to go to white men. It sounds like it's a birthright of white men. That's how black folks and women view us, that we think we're entitled to all of
That's unfortunate. No, it's just about a competent person that can dunk the basketball. Well, I know I'm mixing metaphors now between baseball and basketball and football.
I mean, listen, I think at some point in our lifetimes, we're going to see a woman who's qualified to join Major League Baseball. And I'd love to see that happen. Because if a woman is good enough to play shortstop, she should be able to join the MLB, right?
Is that the same as a man that identifies as a woman and wants to play shortstop on the softball team in the girls' locker room at the college?
You're changing the subject, and we can talk about that if you want.
Well, I definitely changed it. It was just male to female. Like a woman that's capable.
The U.S. military.
I've said that forever. Any woman that wants to jump in and play in a man's sport, a professional sports league comprised all of men. What do I care?
The U.S. military is the strongest advocate for affirmative action in the entire country. They have repeatedly gone to court and filed counterbriefs supporting affirmative action because the military has learned that having a more diverse hiring pool is very good for their organization. They believe in it for that reason. And I don't think anyone's going to say our military is weak because they allow non-white people in there.
I've been hearing that their morale's at an all-time low and they're struggling to find people to join.
I hear that every time there's a Democratic president, my friend. I hear that every time there's a Democratic president. If the morale's low, I don't know what to tell you, but you signed up to do a job. So I'm sorry, morale's low at all kinds of jobs. I don't know how that applies.
And thoughts on the softball team, if someone should join the ladies softball team? We're talking about women joining a man's league and the opposite.
Yeah. Look, transgender people are the current group that it's acceptable to despise. I mean, it was Muslims for quite a while at the beginning of this century. Undocumented immigrants never go out of style. Feminists, when I was a kid, it was feminists and the gays. For a while, it was the gays that want to get married. Now it's transgender people. And they are the group that is most safe to hate and despise.
So do you think women that want to compete against women and not get beat up by a stronger bone density, the taller, faster, like just males compared to females, there's a reason?
Here's how I feel about it. I think that first off,
I want to see protection for the girls that want to play against girls.
There has to be.
I think they've earned that right.
Yes, there has to be a way to protect the integrity of women's sports. And maybe this means adding a mixed league. I don't know. We're at a very emotional, morally exciting time when, for the first time in human history, transgender people are not terrified to be murdered by saying who they really are. It is actually a triumph of how much kinder and more moral America has become that LGBT people can enjoy living in liberty and freedom in our society. I would not want to be like Somalia. I would not want to be like Saudi Arabia or Iran. I am glad that we are more liberal than those deeply conservative societies. But we have to find a way that you protect the integrity of women's sports. I absolutely agree. However, the number one killer of children is guns. This is a bullshit issue that Republicans use that doesn't help anybody's life. They do it to get people upset and angry and outraged. It doesn't improve anybody's quality of life. It doesn't help the middle class. It doesn't bring you health care. It doesn't make the schools better. It gets Republicans elected so they can cut taxes for their donors even more. Guns are a bigger problem in our schools. More people have been sexually molested by clergy than by transgender people. When it comes to women's safe spaces and restrooms, absolutely. We have to have that kind of conversation, have to respect their integrity. At the same time, I'll just say that transgender women are the only people in the world who take drugs to be physically weaker. The only ones. And it doesn't mean they should be competing with sports and beating with women. That's something that has to be discussed. But the difference is, are you doing it to hate transgender people? Are we trying to smear them? Are we trying to make them the scapegoat, the boogeyman? This is what fascists do. There's illegal immigrants or Jews. There is a minority, and they're a threat to our way of life. And only I can keep you safe. And this is how fascists get elected. They make you think that there's this tiny, powerless minority is an existential threat to our way of life, and you have to elect me to keep you safe. And it's bullshit, and it's bad for you. And Hitler did it with the Jews. Donald Trump's doing it with the illegal immigrants, and now trying it with the transgender people. I think going by the Bible, we're going to be judged by how kind we are to transgender people. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't listen to women's concerns about public restrooms being safe spaces. But if a guy wants to put on a dress and go in a ladies' room and fuck with a woman, it's got nothing to do with transgenderism. Guys can do that now. Guys have been able to do that for centuries. Have we had a problem in this country's history with men putting on dresses and going into ladies' rooms to fuck with women? Apparently it's going to happen any minute now. I hear it every day. This is scapegoating. This is demonizing a tiny, powerless minority that Jesus commands us to love from a party that has nothing to offer the middle class. If the Republican Party had policies that would help non-millionaires, they'd never shut up about it. They don't, so we talk about trans kids in sports.
No, I mean, I've also watched the ladies' noses exploding when a guy spikes a volleyball into her face and they have to call a paramedic. I've watched Fallon Fox whoop on people in the MMA and cracking skulls, fractures, and I've seen a lot of really terrible stuff. And you said this is a better society, like you're talking about, where you can live and be yourself without fear of being harmed. I think in the wake of Matthew Shepard in the mid '90s, I think we were all kind of like, look, this is not okay. You be who you are. Don't hurt somebody.
We're not all that way. You know we're not that all way. You know we're not that all way. They're trying.
But I think the country changed. I think the country changed after Matthew Shepard, similarly to in the way that Emmett Till. That like there were flashpoint moments, and society just kind of took a step back and went, "That's really messed up."
I agree.
No matter you like or you don't like. I think most people just went, all right, there's something abhorrent.
So would you support Republican efforts, including, as Clarence Thomas has stated, to take marriage equality away from LGBTQ Americans?
Okay, pause on that topic because that's exactly.
And gentlemen, real quick, I might have to leave here. I
got to go too, guys. This has been great. I can't believe we've done this for so long. This is like watching Dune back to back, guys. We've been at this for a while.
All right.
Look, thank you so much for being here and for being so generous with your time. Yeah.
We'll put a pin in it for now, Blake.
I want to thank you guys for having a really open-hearted invitation and being really, really sincere. Because a lot of times, people do a bait and switch, and so I'm glad that I trusted the invitations. It was a pleasure, and you're gentlemen, and I thank you both very much for having me.
Thank you very much, John. Yeah,
we need more of these conversations. People outside of the Agree to Agree show, just mix it up a little bit more and have a little bit of a civil conversation. All right,
right on.
Thank you both. I appreciate you.
Peace.
All right. There
John,
you go, everybody. Please make sure you're checking out John Fugelsang. You can find him. He's a comedian, an actor, an interviewer, and the host of Tell Me Everything. It's on weekdays on SiriusXM Insight number 121, and also subscribe to the John Fugelsang podcast. Follow him on X at John Fugelsang.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. To be continued.
Peace.
All right, there he goes, everybody. John Fugelsang. Please make sure you're also following Blake Walley at TV's Blake Walley on X. You can also check him out on his Toxically Masculine Tuesday show. That will be, it's Tuesday. Today's Tuesday. So he'll be on tonight. go ahead and look for him on his socials. TheNextLevelNews.com also has his archived content. Yeah, that conversation kept going. We could have kept going. I did try several times to make some pivots, to make a few segues, but we were in a conversation. I think I talked over Blake 4 times in a row, but I couldn't get my words in. So, okay, it happens. Anyhow, yes, everybody in the chat room, thank you so much. Kenneth, of course. Rick, tried to get to you a little bit. It was a little different today, juggling as many of the things as I was a third guest. That always changes the dynamics. But yeah, check out John Fugelsang. Check out Blake Walley. Also, make sure that you are following the New American Media in all the places. So Rumble, we're the New American Media. YouTube, the New American Media. Spotify, the Agree to Disagree Show. Get the podcast. Truth Social, the New American Media. Facebook, we have a page, the New American Media. Also, search the groups and put TNAM, and you'll find a whole bunch of private groups. And when the question asks, how did you find this private group? Say that Brian sent you, and we'll let you in. On X, we're at American_media_. On Instagram, we're the New American Media. On Odyssey, that's our backup to YouTube, odyssey.com/the New American Media. Patreon.com/the New American Media if you would like to subscribe and support our content. Definitely appreciate that. And on Telegram, we're TNAM and TNAM Chat. TNAM and TNAM Chat. That was an exercise. Wow. I don't want to say that I was inspired by Scott Adams having his conversation with, is it Ian Michael Black or Michael Ian Black? I actually, my brain, I'm going to say it's Michael. No, I say it's Ian Michael. Oh, I don't think I have it right. Oh, no, Michael Ian Black. Darn it, I had it right. I did not have it right. Let me just give up the ghost on that one. Okay. Scott Adams had a conversation with Michael Ian Black, and they're from different perspectives, much like how John Fugelsang and Blake and I maybe, like, we're not really overlapping in a lot of policy positions. But they had a banter back and forth on X, and then the idea was floated, hey, let's do a show. And he agreed, and they did a show. And Scott was like, I'm glad we did it. And I don't even know what happened. It's like we're watching 2 different movies, you know? And a lot of us will feel that way. There were maybe 50 to 100 times John said something, and I'm like, all right, just hear him out. Just let it, you know, he'll say his piece and I'll say mine. We don't need to get lost in the minutia of all the finer points of where we may agree or disagree. But this nation was founded on robust conversations. If we talk these issues through, hopefully we're able to find some common ground. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe our policy positions get better. That's a maybe. That's a strong maybe, I think. But it was a good exercise, because usually once I identify that somebody is likely to disagree with me on 82 out of 100 major topics, I back away. I choose to disengage. It's not that I make efforts to not engage. I choose to disengage. I think there's a difference. Maybe it's a distinction without a difference. I'm not entirely certain. But that was an exercise for me. And of course, trying to work Blake and John and figure that out, that was very... I'm very glad we did this. Maybe we can do some more of this in the near future. There's a lot to unpack, though. It's a lot. There's that phrase, you know, 2 different movies are playing on the same screen. That, you know, that's kind of what Scott was saying with Michael Ian Black. And yeah, it came through loud and clear that John is not a fan of Donald Trump. I think policy-wise, I think legislatively, and I think the amount of frame attempts that have been made on Trump legally. The 2 impeachments. I mean, Trump's like, yeah, what's all this going on? What are you firing the prosecutor in Burisma for? What's this money laundering? What are you doing over here? Oh, you're investigating Ukraine, impeached. I think they really did not want that story to get out. Hunter Biden and Burisma and money laundering. And so they've came after Trump to get him removed from office in an impeachment. They framed him with a Russia collusion hoax. They said he's telling people to drink bleach. He said he's calling Nazis fine people. Like, it was just kind of hoax after hoax after hoax. Now, some of those things John brought up about lawsuits from the family business from this, I don't know, what do you say, 60s, 70s, 80s with his dad. You know, those stories are out there. I'm specifically focusing on the 4 years that we had when he was governing. What did we see? And to say that they lost jobs or that debt was created, like, that was 2 years of a pandemic, and that was Congress ramming that through and taking the direction from Fauci, who in hindsight, I wonder if how Trump would play that differently. Or did he learn any lesson? There's legitimate concerns and questions there. There really are. Yeah, I feel like a long basketball practice. I feel spent. Not in a bad way. Just ready to grab some Gatorade, sit down on the bench for a minute, and catch my breath. So I'm going to pause for now. Special thanks to John Fugelsang. That was awesome. We'll do that again if he's down for that. And we'll hope to have Blake Walley back on Thursday. And I'm going to try to keep bringing you some new stories. You know, and I'll some new shows in between the regular Tuesday, Thursday shows. Just let me mention this real quick. I intended to get to this, but I did not yet. This was from Bones Justice, number 89. So this guy was, was it homeless for Trump or homeless veterans for Trump? Seriously, I'm not trying to do any stolen valor, but if he was, I don't want to deprive him of that glory. But he was a homeless man for Trump, maybe a veteran. It's a homeless for Trump. We'll at least start there. And I met the guy in the Bronx, and we're talking about AI and censorship at the top of today's show. And I just wanted to bring it back to this because he told a story that was so interesting, and we're seeing it all over now, a case after case of memory holding stories and pushing stories down. I swear, if you go on Google and type about almost anybody that's Republican or libertarian or conservative, the first few stories are hit pieces every time. It's shocking. It's shocking how collated Google is. You think you just go and get your information, just like you used to think the media was like, oh, they'll tell us who, what, where, when, why. Like, I'd love to know the basics of what's up. It's not the basics of what's up. Google doesn't give you that. They give you their skewed version of it. And it's like, either you're a news outlet or you're a search engine. Why are you trying to be both? And I get why they'd want to try to be both. But you need to understand why we shouldn't be using them. We need to use other browsers. I don't know, DuckDuckGo, Brave, Yandex. There's all sorts of other options. Choose wisely. But this guy, Bones, regarding the top of he had a sign. It's like, for $1, I'll make you a drawing or something. So I gave him $5 and I said, do something with the New American Media. Trump in the Bronx, 5/23/24. I should frame that. That's kind of fun. But he told me, he's like, look, I'm homeless, blah, blah. I heard Trump was coming. I said, that sounds interesting. I want to go. So he opened his phone or whatever. He went on Google. He's like, Trump rally. And he hit go, and he figured out where to go. So he jumped on the subway. He went here to there to there. He walked to the place. Where did Google take him when he put Trump rally? The Trump rally in the Bronx was enormous. The Trump rally in the Bronx was historic, and it was well attended. It was the talk of the town. Literally, it was everywhere. The circus was in town in a good way. People were happy, playing music, selling merchandise, dancing, having a little bit of street banter back and forth, debates, heated debates. So my dude, Bones, types in, I want to go to the Trump rally, it takes him to the anti-Trump rally. You know, these 51 intelligence officials, you're not a former intelligence official. Once you're in, you're always in, and you're always down to put some more propaganda out there. When those 51 intelligence officials said that the Hunter Biden laptop story was fake, and then social media was taking that story down, Zuckerberg was pressured on Instagram and Facebook. YouTube was pressured. Everybody was pressured. Jeez, I think they even removed Parler as an app. Roughly, I forget the poll, it was either 16% or 18% of the people who were surveyed would have changed their vote if they knew that the Burisma Hunter Biden Ukrainian laptop energy story was accurate. And you can extrapolate as to whether that's a legitimate polling of what would have changed. But election interference goes a lot of different directions. Election interference can be many different things. It's not just drop boxes. It's not just voting machines. It's not just the lying legacy media constantly putting out negative Trump hit pieces while praising their own in a propaganda puff piece. It's the search results. So please be aware of the search results and continue to share things that you're not supposed that they don't want you to share. Continue to have these conversations, and you really have to disconnect from sources like Google that are going to so overtly try to skew reality to mix with the whims of their perfect world. It's great to have a perspective, but if you're trying to be a neutral search application, I don't know what you even call it, a search website, Google has lost the trust of the American people. They've given you everything you need to know regarding whether you should trust them as the place where you click on and quickly get an answer to something. Because I'm telling you, I've never noticed it until the past. I've always noticed it, but something has changed in the past, maybe this year, maybe as recently as the past few months. I am finding it more and more difficult to accurately locate the obvious thing that I'm searching for as they push it down further and further. Page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, to the point where you don't even see it. And if you're believing the stuff that you're finding, but they're not showing you the other stuff, and that goes for the new American media. Our content has been so hidden, demonetized, shadow banned, deleted, accounts removed, access restricted, live features blocked. Go down the list. We've suffered every one of them. Every one of them. That's not reality when you erase people. And that's what they've been doing. So I just give a shout out to Bones. If you see Bones around the Bronx or wherever he happens to be, give him $1, give him $5, have him draw you something. And just realize when he typed in, I want to go to the Trump rally, they gave him an address. They took him to the anti-Trump rally. Come on. Come on. That's beyond the pale. So be savvy consumers out there. All right. I'm going to take off for now. Thanks to everyone who joined. Please go back and check out our content. We've been posting a lot of videos. We're going to do a lot more. We have some man on the street stuff from the past couple months. It's just been a whirlwind trying to get caught up on everything. So stay tuned. More content coming. I appreciate you. I love you. We'll talk to you again soon. Take